Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. A warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hicks Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you, as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Ryan McIntyre, who does a tremendous job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We're going to talk with him about what he's seen in conference play thus far. We are going to be deep diving on the games that we've got for Tuesday and some of the teams that he sees ascending/declining a little bit. And then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GD_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Boston College now 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 games. Ever since they won that tournament out there in the Cayman Islands, it's been pretty miserable for them. They lose to Notre Dame by a count of 78-60. For Notre Dame, Marcus Burton once again cooking for this team. 20 points, went just 5 of 15 from the floor, but got to the free throw line. As for Boston College, they did go 6 of 6 at the free throw line, and they actually go 10 of 19 from 3 in this game. Problem was they lost the turnover battle 18-10. They also lost the rebound battle by kind of 35-23, as Kiba Njai was able to supply Notre Dame with 11 points, 9 rebounds. Nice, clean, quality win out there. For Maryland, it's a win but no cover. For Minnesota, their second cover since opening night, 77-71 the final, as it has been a miserable year for Minnesota against the spread, but they are no longer dead last against the spread. That dubious moniker with Minnesota being able to get this cover now belongs to Grand Canyon, as Grand Canyon 3-12 against the spread. Actually, Minnesota's tied with them, 3-12-2 against the spread, but Minnesota has a pair of pushes in there as well. But they go 8 of 17 from 3-point range. Off the bench, you were able to get 15 points out of Isaac Usama, was able to supply Minnesota with 15 points. For Minnesota, they do lose the turnover battle 16-10, but actually won the rebound battle in this game 35-30, as Dawson Garcia supplied 21 points, and for Maryland, bailing them out was Derek Queen, 27 points, 7 rebounds, as Maryland 6 of 19 from 3-point range in this one. And for UCLA, the hole just continues to go further and further, as Rutgers was on a 3-game losing streak. They sap that. They take down UCLA by a count of 75-68, and for UCLA, they have not won a game this calendar year, as for UCLA, they go 6 of 19 from 3-point range. Rutgers 6 of 20 from 3, but Dylan Harper looked much better in this game. 18 points, 4 assists. He had a double-double, 20 points, 10 rebounds out of Ace Bailey as well, and for Rutgers, just 10 turnovers in this game, 9 for UCLA, but UCLA loses the rebound battle 37-29, as Bailey sent rebounds, able to pace away for Rutgers. We saw a lot of Southland, SWAC, and MEAC action as well, but we also saw a fun game out there in the Coastal Conference, as Elon is now 12-4 against the spread. The Elon Phoenix able to get a win. They're able to get a cover against Campbell by a count of 81-68, as for Campbell, they actually shoot it halfway decent in this game from the floor, but for Campbell, they do a nice job protecting the ball. They win the turnover battle 11-5, but they lost the rebound battle 40-31, and they went 6 of 26 from 3-point range. As Elon, they went 9 of 25 from 3-point range. Sam Sherry, double-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds. You also had TJ Simpkins get close to a double-double, 12 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds, stuffed the stat sheet in this one. For Elon, they're looking very rock solid out there in the Coastal Conference, so we'll see what they're able to supply moving forward. And then out there in the Southland, you've got a team that's been able to make you a lot of money in Houston Christian, but not on this night. As for McNeese, they were about a 14 to a 15-point favorite in this one. They get the win, they get the cover against Houston Christian, 75-59. Houston Christian now 12-3 against the spread, but for Houston Christian, just 7 7 of 27 from 3 and 12 of 20 at the free throw line. Meanwhile, for Houston Christian, they also lost the turnover battle by a count of 17-10 for McNeese. Every single one of their starters able to reach double figures in this one. And then also Southeast Louisiana has been a good against the spread team out there from that conference as well. They go on the road and they knock off Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin by a kind of 66-59. A Stephen F. Austin team has been one of the best teams of the under all season long, as they just have not been able to supply any offense whatsoever. And for Southeast Louisiana, being able to go 6 of 18 from three-point range, more than enough on this day, as Stephen F. Austin 6 of 19 from 3, but 13 of 23 at the free throw line. They lost the turnover battle 21-11. You're not going to win too many games losing the turnover battle 21-11. And for Stephen F. Austin, 10 unders are just 4 overs for them thus far this season, as I've had a few teams out there in the Southland be very underwhelming, as you've only got 3 teams above 500 to the over. Incarnate Word 7-5-1 to the over. Texas A&M Corpus Christi 8 overs 6 unders, and New Orleans 9 overs 8 unders as well. But for Southeast Louisiana, they're also now 9 unders 5 overs and a push thus far this season as well. So that has been very fascinating, and one of your better teams in terms of being able to score points. UT Rio Grande Valley not able to do any of that on Monday. They get the win, but no cover against East Texas A&M 57-55. Not quite sure what happened out there, but for UT Rio Grande Valley with the non-cover, they're now 8-4-1 against the spread, and Nichols now 8-4-2 against the spread. They took down Incarnate Word 88-82 the final, so they were able to get a very nice overwhelming performance, as Robert Brown went 9 of 10 from three-point range. Nichols has whole 12 of 20 from 3, 24 of 29 at the free throw line. So Incarnate Word, they shot 10 of 26 from three-point range, but completely outdone in this game. They also lost the rebound battle, so Nichols finds a way to persevere. They're able to get the job done. Not getting the job done was our good friends over there, Mississippi Valley State, and man, it is reaching peak levels of sadness for them right now, as they actually played a spirited first half against Texas Southern. They led by a count of 28-27, and then they lost the second half 55-25. They lose, and they do not cover the 15 plus here. It's by a count of 82-53. Line actually reached as high as 17.5 in some spots, but for Texas Southern, 11-25 from 3. For Mississippi Valley State, they went 5 of 15 at the free throw line. They lost the turnover battle 20-11. Like, this is just rough right here. Like, man, this is not good. And somehow, some way, they're 5-10 against the spread record, better than Texas Southern's, which is now 4-10 against the spread. And Alabama A&M right now, they are checking in at a nice hearty 3-11 against the spread. Their game goes to 3 overtimes against Jackson State, and they do not cover the 7.5. 103-93 the final. They got 7.5 points. They go to triple overtime and they don't cover. Almighty brutalness right there, as AC Bryant did his part for Alabama A&M. He threw in their 39 points, but for Alabama A&M, 21 of 32 at the free throw line. They had 31 turnovers. They lost the turnover battle 31-15. Boy, that is rough right there. And by the way, Deshaun Ruffin, 17 points, former Ole Miss standout. So, yeah, Jackson State had a guy coming off the bench and play more than 40 minutes of the game. That's what you were experiencing out there. So, some tomfoolery, to say the least, out there in the SWAC and out there in the MEAC. You've had Norfolk State be a really good against the spread team thus far this season. They are now 13-5 against the spread, as on Monday they do not get the job done against Morgan State. Morgan State, as a pretty sizable underdog, gets it done. 78-74 the final, as Morgan State gave up fewer than 85 points for like the first time in an eon. 8 of 17 from three-point range for Morgan State, and for Norfolk State, 11-21 at the free throw line, 7-27 from three-point range. They lost the turnover battle 14-13, so even though they won the rebound battle 45-30, they did not have enough to be able to cut it here. And then you saw South Carolina State, who's down 12-7 against the spread. They get the win, and they do get the cover against Maryland Eastern Shore. This by a count of 78-74 on some numbers. Like, they close in some places minus 13.5, other places more around about a 14 or so. So all dependent upon the number there, but pretty rock solid win there. And if you're looking at the MEAC in terms of totals, Morgan State, that under that they played against Norfolk State on Monday, just their 4th over of the season. They played 12 overs of 4 unders. You've also had NC Central be a really good over team as well. They're up to 12 overs to 6 unders. They do get the win against Delaware State, but no cover as a 6.5 point favorite. 75-72, and this one just falls under the total. The total was 147.5, as Delaware State 0 of 8 from three-point range. They did not make a single three in this game, and for NC Central, they win the rebound battle by a count of 35-31, and they do not cover a game where their opponent did not make a single three. So we had a lot of fun and frivolous behavior out there, and then we also saw Furman, who's been quite good against the spread thus far this season out there in the SoCon. Boy, they took it on the chin against Wofford. 81-62 the final in this one. For Furman, it was just missed basket after missed basket, a lot of them being wide open. They're now 9-5 against the spread, and for this Wofford team, they're now 7-9 ATS. But for Wofford, 13 of 32 from three-point range. For Furman, 8 of 34 from the outside, and for Furman, they actually win the turnover battle 10-5. They lose the rebound battle though 52-35. So that was a little bit brutal. And if you're looking at college basketball and what we're seeing trend-wise, overall for the season, it's been a little bit more of an underdog season as we've been seeing the dogs barking at a clip of about 50.5% against the spread. Truth be told, behind the scenes, typically I utilize covers for a lot of these against the spread trends that we're seeing in college basketball this season. And right now I'm getting 504 getaway timeout in terms of reporting those trends to you. So I don't have as many of those. We will get those back tomorrow. So a little bit of a bad beat on that front. But what is always good is getting on Ryan McIntyre, who does such an amazing job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We're going to be looking at Tuesday's card and so much more with him next right here on Just Go See with myself, Xavier, Peterson, now about the EVERY Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Just Go See with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast. So we're taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he's been hard at work taking a look at all these teams, whether they be the big of the big, whether they be the small of the small. He, along with one of our other good friends in Kobe Dan, do a tremendous job on that front. And for those that love the Big 12 and for those that love West Virginia, he does a great job with the Ryan and Rush Show as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled MAC. And Ryan, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, happy conference season. We're starting to get a little bit more of a sample size, and I think some teams are separating from one another.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you bring that up. So how about if we do dive in a little bit more? How do you take a look at some of these teams that are some of the top teams, and which ones do you think might be a little bit of paper tigers, and which of these teams do you think are for real and are really starting to show their might?
I really value road wins, so some of these teams that have gone into hostile environments, won games in not ideal spots, Iowa State winning in Lubbock, and what I thought honestly was a scheduled loss, finding a way, trailing that whole game. They've really stood out. Houston seems to be hitting their stride, and the defense has never been the issue. It was about if they could start making shots consistently, and they've started to do that. Florida has looked the part, won on the road. Kansas started to find themselves a little bit as well. And then, of course, Alabama and Auburn. I know Auburn's going to be banged up here over the next couple of weeks, but still, they'll be good come March. Those teams have really separated themselves, I think, over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they certainly have been, and I do think that that is going to be so much fun to take a look at because the SEC these last few days have been just so interesting to take a look at so many of those games, and now we are seeing a bit of an injury to Johnny Broome as well. Now, we don't know how the game against Mississippi State is going to be going quite yet. That's something that's a little bit TBD, but how do you take a look at Auburn without Broome? Because we actually do have a small sample size without him in that game against Georgia State. They look just fine, but obviously going against Mississippi State, going up against a gauntlet that we're going to be seeing in the Big 12, a little bit different than going up against a team that I would consider to be below average in the Sun Belt.
I agree with you, Greg. I think they're going to be fine. I think they will take it on the chin a little bit in the SEC just because Johnny Broome was maybe the front-runner player of the year. So hopefully he comes back healthier and better than ever before. But I do think, Greg, ironically, maybe a blessing in disguise for their team come March, because I think they'll start seeing some more front court depth, some guys step up, and I think that'll suit them better come the long run. But in the short term, I think they will take a couple losses here. I mean, they got Mississippi State coming to town. They got to go to Athens. They got Tennessee, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Florida on the horizon as well. I mean, heck, the SEC is such a gauntlet. Everybody's going to take it on the chin at one time or another.
Yep, absolutely. And that's just what happens when you've got a difficult conference like this, as Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly the Big 12, it is a gauntlet as well. We've been seeing all sorts of craziness with regards to that conference as well. And your guys in West Virginia were able to get the job done on Sunday as well, on the road against Colorado, albeit a Colorado team that's a little bit down, but as we know, that travel, it is always a little bit of a bear. But what have you just noticed in Big 12 play thus far? Because I feel like that's been one of the more interesting, and for this year, a little bit more of a strange conference than we've seen in past years as well.
I think the teams that we thought were going to be really good coming into the year have finally found themselves. Arizona and Baylor were a little bit suspect. Heck, even Kansas, they took a couple losses earlier in the year. But I think the top tier of Houston, Iowa State, and then Kansas, and then I think Baylor and Arizona, ironically, playing tomorrow night, is kind of in that tier two. I love my Mountaineers, but they definitely have overachieved. They're super banged up, but they've done a good enough job on the front end to put them in a good position to get to the NCAA tournament. I do think that they'll ultimately probably will end up around 10-10 or around 500 in league play. Texas Tech, I know that was Heartbreak City the other day. I think they're probably the sixth best team. And then you got a couple teams that have really just disappointed in Cincinnati and Kansas State so far.
Absolutely. With Kansas State, it has been so rough for them. And I take a look at that game that they're going to be having for Tuesday against Texas Tech. And I really think that that's a big game for them to try to be able to rise up, because if you're at home and you're in the Big 12, you need to be able to knock off more of these mid-tier teams, which at this point I would consider Texas Tech, like I would consider them a little bit above mid-tier right now. If I were to do like a 1 through 14, I'd put Texas Tech a little bit above 7th, but outside the top 4 personally. I don't know if you agree / disagree there, but if you're Kansas State, that's a game that with your NIL collective, with the way that things are going, you need to win. And I just don't think that they're going to get the job done, because even though they have so much talent on paper, it hasn't come together for them.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen them get beat the way that they did on their home floor.
I thought that was going to be a spot where they rose up 2 against Houston, and then they just fell completely flat.
It was honestly remarkable. Like you said, I had them with the point. I thought, hey, it's K-State getting 10 at home. They're going to pop up. They got to start boosting this resume. What a better spot. I do like them. Again, I'll double down here with the points against Texas Tech. But you're right, Greg. I mean, if you're losing to mid-tier Big 12 teams at home, that's going to create losing streaks, because it's so hard to win on the road in this league. And you may get one of these top-tier teams coming to you as well, like Houston. It is imperative that you hold home court against these mid-tier teams in the Big 12 and the bottom half as well.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be so much fun to see what we get in terms of these Tuesday games, as our good friend Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that there is a little bit of divide between the haves and the have-nots as well, but one of the teams I think is interesting in the Big 12 right now is BYU, who we're going to be fighting on Tuesday against Oklahoma State at home, and right now they're a 13.5-point favorite. But what do you make out of both this game and BYU as a whole? Because Oklahoma State is clearly one of those teams in a rebuild, which I don't think that the rebuild is going bad under Steve Lutz. It's just one of those cases where I don't think that they have the pieces to really be too competitive this season. But for BYU, just a little bit of a strange team that I think we both agree much different at home rather than on the road.
The altitude, too. I mean, it's such a tough place to play in Provo. I mean, Oklahoma State is staying out there. They just played at Utah. But I'm with you. Oklahoma State's kind of a team I want to fade on the road. We're catching BYU coming off 3 straight losses. Heartbreak on Saturday. They lost a tough one as well against Texas Tech at home. I'm going to lay the points with BYU. I think they open it up here, kind of like they did against Arizona State in the opener.
Yep, absolutely. I think that this is going to be an interesting game, to say the least. And then with regards to Tuesday games as well, I was mentioning G&I Broome being out for Auburn. How do you take a look at that first game for them against Mississippi State? Because right now they're a 7.5 to an 8-point favorite, and I think that this is such an intriguing spot, because no doubt about it, Broome is such an integral part to Auburn. But I like what I've seen out of Chaney Johnson, and I feel like in a lot of cases for Broome on any other team, he'd be worth like 4+ points to the line. But because of Auburn's depth, I think that they're actually able to absorb this better than most teams. Not that you want to have a potential player of the year candidate out of the lineup, but I feel like Auburn is actually built to be able to sustain any sort of loss with just how well they're built.
That goes back to my point. I do think that it could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, where some other guys are going to be asked to step up and take on a bigger role. So, like you said, a guy like Cardwell, a guy like Johnson, can they step up more as well in the front court? I do think they will be okay. But I do like Mississippi State because they are coming off a disappointing loss themselves on Saturday against Kentucky. So I like Chris Jan's team. They've been a much better offensive team than any of his other teams in the past. So I do like the points with Hail State.
Yeah, with Mississippi State, they're coming off of a little bit of a rough loss over the weekend and looking to be able to bounce back here. We'll see if they're going to be able to do so, as our good friend Ryan McIntyre does such amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly that Tuesday card is going to be a lot of fun. And I think that it is going to be interesting to see what we get in that Kentucky versus Texas A&M game, because I was talking about BYU being one of those teams that was so different when they were away from home rather than at home. I view this Kentucky offense the same way. I've just noticed that when they've been on the road, now they did have a really nice triumph over Mississippi State over the weekend, but that offense, their three-point shooting, just is not quite the same when they're away from home. But when they are at home, they really get things cooking. But defense takes a little bit of a setback. As we know, Texas A&M, they're dealing with the Wade Taylor injury. How do you take a look at this game with an A&M team that the one thing that we know about them is that they're going to hit the boards?
It's going to be a fun game. I actually will lay with Kentucky. Like you said, I love when they're at home because they rely on making shots at such a high clip, and they can continue to look more and more kind of like what BYU did last year under Mark Pope. They have an identity. They share the ball. They run really good offense. I think it's a tough spot for A&M. Another game removed without Wade Taylor. Saturday was an emotional get-up spot against Alabama. A lot of fouls in that game. I mean, that was like a 3-hour basketball game. So I do like to lay in the points with Kentucky tomorrow night at Rupp.
Yep, absolutely. With Kentucky just been such a different team at Rupp Arena this season with their offense, and we'll see if that is going to be the case moving forward. And we've got ourselves a lot of intriguing MAC action on Tuesday as well. I'm not sure how you take a look at some of these games, but I feel like there's a clear divide between the haves and the have-nots in the MAC, and I'm finding myself liking some of these bigger favorites on the card. I don't know how you take a look at Tuesday, but I look at a spot like Bowling Green laying 6.5 to 7 points against Buffalo, and that for me feels like it should be a double-figure line.
Yeah, and usually the MAC, to your point, like we see those Ohio schools really separate. Kent State, Akron, Toledo traditionally, and they usually end up in the Final Four in Cleveland come March Madness. So I am with you. I do like the favorites in the MAC, and usually on the weeknights, I feel like chalk usually tends to come through more just because it's a reset coming off the weekend, reset on the travel spot. So I'll lay some points with some MAC teams tomorrow night, most likely.
Yeah, I do think that with the MAC action, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out there. And then I think that we've got a few other interesting mid-major games as well, because you get the Mountain West that always takes center stage on Tuesday. Those are always some fun games as well. But I look at this Little Rock versus Southeast Missouri State game as well, and I feel like this is a big battle out there in the Ohio Valley Conference, because I've liked what I've seen out of Little Rock. Right now, they're a 2.5 to 3 point underdog with a total of 135. And I think, unbeknownst to a lot of people, this has been a Little Rock team that has been one of your better mid-major defenses out there in all of college basketball.
I actually like SEMO just because of the tough scheduling spot here for Little Rock. This will be their third game in, 5-6 days. So now they got to go to SEMO. SEMO's been good this year under Brad Korn at home. I think I'm going to take the Red Hawks here tomorrow against Little Rock. But the OVC, I joke, we need to move this league to Monday night because this league is so fascinating. Every game comes down to the wire, and every line is between 1 and 3 points.
Yeah, it's been so much fun to take a look at the OVC. And how about a few Sunday night games as well? The fact that our latest tip-off the last 2 weeks has been 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Going to be that way the next few weeks as well. And I think that that's such an interesting topic because we're two people that money is money. It doesn't matter if you're betting on the Ohio Valley Conference, the ACC, the SEC, what have you. Just how off-putting is it what the scheduling has been in college basketball this season? Because I feel like there's a lot of schmucks like myself that would absolutely love a 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific time game on like a Sunday or something like that. And there's just a lot of the schedule that I feel like college basketball is not utilizing for these mid-major teams.
Oh, yeah, me and Colby talk about it every night. It drives us insane. I know the NFL playoffs are going on, but most of the people have more than one TV nowadays where they watch games. So I don't understand why the Ohio Valley, for example, doesn't dive into playing on a Sunday night or a Friday night. Heck, I mean, the MAAC and the Mountain West have done a great job getting in these standalone windows, and I feel like I've watched more MAAC basketball than any other mid-major league because they play on Fridays and Sundays. So I don't get why. I think that we're slowly trending that way just because I think we're getting away from thinking like we did in the 90s with ticket sales. But in reality, TV drives the boat here. And if you get your programs in standalone windows, it's more money for the league and your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. So hopefully we can get more of those mid-major games rather than burying it on a card of 150 games on a Saturday. We can reduce the card to 135. So
No kidding.
I think, yeah, man. I mean, I love the college basketball Saturdays. I love all the action. I love going through all those games, but it's like, let's feature some of these mid-major teams, give them a little bit of shine as well. And then with regards to Tuesday card, anything else that you're looking at, whether that be from a betting perspective or a game in general that maybe you won't be betting, but you just want to hunker down and watch?
I'm really interested, back to the Big 12, is some of those two late-night games. Arizona hosting Baylor, Arizona State hosting UCF, flipping from Saturday. That is a travel partner. I like Arizona laying the points against Baylor. I like the way that this team is coming around come Big 12 play. They took it on the chin a little bit in the non-con. I like Xavier laying the points against Villanova. Villanova's played, I think, a little bit above their expectations over the last couple of games. I think it's a little bit of a letdown. I do like Indiana with the points as a home dog against Illinois. I'm looking forward to that game. Always delivers, home team, two proud fan bases. And the other one, I'm actually probably going to lay it with Alabama at home. They're just a different team in that building, high variance. And Ole Miss coming in here, playing kind of a light schedule so far to get to 3-0 in SEC play.
Yep, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of games that are going to be so rambunctious, and Alabama seems to be coming strong as well. That's something that I've been picking up on, and something that I've been picking up on for a very long time is all of your great work, Ryan. You and Kobe do a tremendous job over there on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. You do such an incredible job covering this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Appreciate it as always, Greg. Yeah, go check us out every night on the College Basketball Experience, breaking down every game like yourself. And Mountaineer fans, go check out the Ryan and Russ Show where we break down the Mountaineers all 365 days out of the year.
And on leap year, 366 days out of the year, much like we had last year. As Ryan does such a great job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we eat some bank shots. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to get Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such an excellent job over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, taking a look at this great game of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas station order. We have no games on the extra games board, so everything is essentially in time order. That'll keep things all nice, neat, clean, and easy here. So how about if we do get things started with 601, 602 on the card? It is Xavier and the X-Men play us Villanova. Villanova is a underdog of 3 points, and your total on this game between 147.5 to a 148. Did set my total at a 145.5. I'm in on the under. Anyone that took the under with me a few days ago on that Villanova versus St. John's game knows that Villanova's not necessarily playing too up-tempo. They're outside the top 325 in terms of total possessions per game. The late game fellas were just absolutely killer, but I do think that for Villanova, we are going to see a little bit of regression with this three-point shooting, which has been some of the best in all of college basketball. Villanova currently number 4 in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. As a collective, they are shooting north of 40% from three. Xavier is right now 14th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. They do get back Zach Freemantle. I think is going to be about on the defensive side of things as well. Freemantle is able to give you 14-plus points, 6-plus rebounds per contest. They were without him for much of non-conference play, and it's a Xavier team that's doing a good job in terms of being up at the glass. They're allowing opponents to grab an offensive rebound on just 24.4% of their misses, and Villanova's been much better on the glass this year as well. You bring in on Boyaki, who's been able to give you 6-plus rebounds per game, and then You've been able to have Vuka Poplar give you your versatility, 11 plus points, 5 plus rebounds per contest. So this team has been allowing fewer second and third chances than in past years. You do have the top scorer currently in all of college basketball, and Eric Dixon on the side of Villanova. He has been absolutely tremendous all season long with north of 25 points, 2.5 assists, 5 rebounds per contest, shoots 47% from three-point range. And this has been a Villanova team that has done a nice job of valuing the ball. Only about 9.5 turnovers per game. That's a top 20 mark in the country. Villanova has fallen a little bit with their free throw shooting. That's because they've been number 1 in the country like each of the last 3 years. Now they're only in the top 15 at about 79.5%. But I do think that Xavier going to do an okay job guarding the three-point arc. This has been a team that has been allowing opponents to shoot north of 33.5% from 3. That's outside the top 200. Villanova certainly outside the top 200 with that regard as well. But I don't think that there's going to be a lot of second and third chances for these teams. And I do think that Xavier finds a way to get the job done with Davion McKnight, Ryan Conwell in the backcourt, combining for about 26.5 points per contest. Conwell's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. I mentioned the Villanova free throw shooting for the Xavier team. Each of your top 4 scorers shoot at least 76.8% at the free throw line. Like what I'm seeing out of Marcus Foster as well, shooting 43.5% from 3, 8.5 points per contest. While I do think that this is going to be an efficient day on the offensive side of things for both teams, I just think that you get too few possessions for and over in the spot. So did somebody total 145.5? I'm in on the under. I do think that Xavier executes just a little bit better on the offensive side of things, so want to lay up to 5 with them. 6-3, 6-4 on the betting board. This will be a game that I write up. Bowling Green plays us to Buffalo. Buffalo is an underdog of 6.5 points. The on scheme is 157.5. I wish I could put it any other way, but Buffalo is just simply not doing anything right. They are outside of the top 320 in terms of rebound percentage, points scored on a per possession basis, and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're about 284th in the country in terms of ball security. This has been a Buffalo team that has really not guarded the three-point line, as well as they are 300th in the country themselves in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. And Ty Dunn is right now in the top 3 in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers per game for any individual player, as he's been really one of the main guys for this team. Now Ryan Sable has been able to shoot it really well from 3, top scorer of 16.5 points, shooting 42.5% from 3. But for Dunn, even though he does give you the 12.5 points, 2 steals, 6 assists per contest, 4.7 turnovers per game, and you just don't really have a lot down low for the team. Noah Batchelor has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but I do think the Bowling Green going to be able to win that battle down low and be able to take this one easily, because you have a Bowling Green team that they themselves have been a top 130 unit in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home. Shoot about 35% from three-point range. Marcus Johnson being your main guy with about 16.5 points per game. And Javonte Campbell is 3.3 steals per game. That's a top 5 mark in all of college basketball. Bowling Green becoming a team that's pretty solid at being able to generate turnovers. Top 175 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Trey Thomas has been able to throw in there about 10 points per contest. He's been emerging as the season has come along as well. Like what I'm seeing with regards to getting a little bit more down low out of Jamal Felt as well. They've needed it because Sam Towns has been out of the lineup for much of the season due to injury, and he was their top rebounder with about 7 rebounds per game. But for this Buffalo team, just really not executing on offense, on defense, with all the turnovers. I do think that Bowling Green going to be able to take it to them in this spot. I set my line at 12, so I actually wrote up Bowling Green laying the number in. Just again, with Buffalo's turnovers, I don't think that they do their part with this total, despite the fact that they are a little bit more of an up-tempo team. Bowling Green at their core, they're a team that's looking to run it and gun it as well. So my total 154, so I'm going to be in on that total under, and with my write-up, I'm going to be willing to write up Bowling Green laying the number. 605, 606 on the betting board. As Northern Illinois, they play us Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio is a 12.5 point road favorite. Total on scheme, it is 146 to 146.5. Semi-line at 11.5 here at 12 plus. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northern Illinois. This is a Northern Illinois team that I would call them a bottom 35 team in all of college basketball in terms of just their overall play. It has been rough, to say the least, for them, but I do think that there's a little bit of upside here with Quentin Jones being a nice stat sheet stuffer. He's given the team 16 points, shooting only about 30.5% from 3, but 4 boards, 3 assists, steal per contest. James Zen, who comes over from Western Illinois, he's been able to shoot more in the mid-30s from 3-point, throwing there 13 points per game. It's a Northern Illinois team that has collective. They shoot about 32.5% from 3. They just don't hit the glass whatsoever. They're outside the top 280 with regards to their rebound percentage, and for Miami of Ohio. Well, not a team that necessarily does an amazing job on the glass. They certainly should be able to win that battle for Miami of Ohio. They also have a pair of nice go-to scorers in Peter Suter along Cam Kraft. They've been able to combine for just under 32 points per contest. Kraft is right now shooting 45.5% from three-point range, and then Ian Elmore, he's been able to give you 12 points, shoots 43% from three-point range. Really, other than Antoine Woolfolk, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but it's a little bit of a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with regards to this Miami of Ohio team, who, if you look at their defensive rebound percentage numbers, they've been one of the better teams at not allowing you to get a second chance opportunity. They don't generate a lot of second chances themselves, but with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, they've been a top 125 team in all of college basketball, being able to cut teams off after one shot. So that's something that I do like with them. This is Miami of Ohio team that isn't going to get completely out of sorts with regards to their tempo either. This is a team that's clocking in about 153rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game for Northern Illinois. I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough to hold in this game, though, because this is a Miami of Ohio team that, while they've got some very good three-point shooting, they're a team that they themselves are going to give it up quite a bit from three-point range. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while they themselves shoot 40+% from three-point range. So I do think that it's going to be a little bit more of a make-it-and-take-it sort of game. Again, I don't think that you're going to be seeing the world's greatest amount of execution from Northern Illinois on the offensive side of things, and I do think that not being able to get second and third chances could be a little bit costly with regards to the total, but I did set my total at 147.5. I think that Northern Illinois does just enough to hold in this game to be able to get you over and to be able to cover this spread. So did set my line at 11.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Northern Illinois. Set my total at 147.5, so in on the over. 607, 608 on the betting board. Akron is playing us to Toledo. Toledo's a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog. Total is 163, and I did set my total at 160.5. I'm in on the under. Toledo, just not the same offensive team that they have been in past years. Not that Toledo's like some sort of a terrible offense or anything like that, but they're more around about 150th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Interestingly, they're more in the top 125 in terms of points scored per possession when they're on the road. They've been suffering a little bit more at home, but for Toledo, just not the same three-point shooting team that they've been in past years. They're shooting as a collective about 33% from three-point range, which is an average, just slightly below average number. Typically, this is one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. St. Louis has been great. He's been able to shoot about 44.5% from three-point range, but he's the only of their top 5 scorers that shoots above 34.5% from three-point range, and this is always a top-heavy team. Like, Bryce Ford has been able to shoot about 46% from three, but he only chips in there about 6 points per contest. Doesn't make too much of a difference there, and then his team down low really doesn't have too much to speak of. St. Louis has also been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. You've had Javon Simmons give you some good versatility, 2.5 assists, 11.5 points, 5 rebounds per contest, and Sonny Wilson chips in there 15+ points per contest as well. But this is a Toledo team that they continue to be one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball with regards to their defense, back outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and 278th in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They are allowing opponents to get 33.4% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in road/neutral court games. That's outside the top 300, and I do think that that's going to allow Akron to really take hold in this game. James Okonkwo should be able to win that battle down low for Akron. He's been able to do a nice job pulling in for the team north of 7 rebounds per game. And then you've got Johnson squared as Tafari Johnson has done a nice job as their top scorer with about 4 assists, 12 points per contest, shoots 36% from 3. Nate Johnson, not really bombing it well from 3, but 3.5 assists, 11.5 points per contest, while Isaiah Gray, who comes on over from Cornell, 10 points per game, and he's shot north of 40% from 3-point range. You've got a lot of just interesting mixers and shakers for the team. Josiah Harris, who comes on over from West Virginia, his injury did cause a little bit of strife for this team with him being out of the lineup since early December. They've had to mix and match, but they have found a way to be able to do so. Akron, not the same team defensively that they've been in past years, also not the same team tempo-wise that we've seen in past years. They're now a top 40 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but this has been an Akron team that has shot about 39.3% from 3-point range at home, less than 33% away from home. I just don't quite think that Toledo does their part with this total. I do think that an Akron team that's outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis begins to buckle up just a little bit more under John Groove. So I did set my total at a 160.5 in on the under, one to lay up to 8 with Akron as well. 609, 610 on the betting board. North Texas is on the road against East Carolina. East Carolina is a home underdog of between 2.5 and 3 points. So on this game, you're going to be finding that anywhere between a 128 to a 128.5, and I'm going to be in on this total under. I set my total at a 124.5, and I wrote up North Texas. I'd be willing to lay up to 6 with them. With this North Texas unit, they've been doing a pretty tremendous job of generating turnovers. Number 4 in the country in terms of turnovers forced per defensive play, and they go up against an East Carolina team that's just all sorts of bad from the perimeter, both on the offensive end and the defensive side of things. At home, they are shooting less than 28% from three-point range, overall 359th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage on offense. On defense, they're 346th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And it's not even like this team has been amazing with regards to generating turnovers or anything like that. East Carolina does have some nice versatile pieces, as I love what I've seen out of R.J. Felton. He's flying the team with 17.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists per game, and it is a East Carolina unit that has gotten quite a bit out of Jan Farrell. He's like the only guy on the roster that's averaging over 6 points per contest, that's shooting above 30% from three-point range, but you just need a little bit more out of some of these guys. They have a guy that's able to average about 2 steals per contest in Jordan Riley that's been able to give you about 14 points per contest, and then C.J. Walker gives you 17 points per game, but outside their top, I would say about 4 or so scores, you just don't get a lot of production on the boards or anything else with regards to this East Carolina team. Now East Carolina, a top 40 team in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they do grab as an offensive rebound, but I do think that North Texas is going to do a good job on that side of things, as well as you've got Mule Sissoko down low, has been able to give you 5.5 points, a little bit north of 5.5 rebounds per game in terms of offensive rebounds allowed. North Texas, a top 10 team in the country, they allow 7.5 offensive rebounds per game, so East Carolina going to be getting fewer of those second and third chances than they're used to, and then Aiden Wright, he has been Mr. Right for this team, averaging about 13 points, shoots 93.5% the free throw line, 38.5% from three-point range. Throwing there, Latrell Jostle has been able to give you 8.5 points. He shoots the 930s from three-point range. It's a North Texas team that, despite how slowly they play, they're a top 75 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've done a nice job on the interior as well, top 150 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and with being able to generate all those turnovers, I think that it's going to be a rough night at the office for East Carolina. I did set North Texas as a result as a 6.5-point favorite, and North Texas, one of the slowest, grimiest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, once again back in the bottom 5 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. East Carolina now a little bit more of a mid-tempo team, about 177th, but I think that this North Texas team is able to get their slow, controlled style. So I'm in on this total under, and I'm willing to lay it with North Texas, and wrote that up. 6-11, 6-12 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Ohio plays host to Ball State, and Ball State does find themselves as a underdog of 10.5 to 11 points. Drawing scheme, it is 152, and I wrote up Ball State with the points. I set them as a 5.5-point underdog. I feel like bookmakers have not taken into account the fact that Peyton Sparks has been so good down low for this Ball State team. He has given the team 12 plus rebounds in each of the last 4 games. It is a Ball State unit that has been able to do a nice job of guarding the perimeter as well. They're a top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Ohio is not. Ohio is right now 359th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I do think that that is going to be their undoing in this game. Now, you do have an Ohio team that they themselves run some pretty good, clean offense under Jeff Bowles. This is a team that is never going to turn the ball over a whole heck of a lot, and I like what I'm seeing out of Jackson Pavelski in the backcourt. His three-point shooting is down from where it has been in past years, but still giving you 12 points, 5.5 assists per contest, and then AJ Clayton down low, nearly 2 blocks, 17.5 points per game. Impacts the game in so many different ways while shooting north of 41% from 3. And the other AJ Brown, shoots about 41% from the outside, 11.5 points per game, but for Ohio, not necessarily a team that has been able to do a great job along the outside. They have been able to generate about 13.5 turnovers per game, but I do think that Ball State is going to be able to overcome that. I was mentioning Sparks down low. He began his career at Ball State, went to Indiana for a year. Took him a little bit of time to be able to get it going, but now he's been able to do a tremendous job down low for this team. And then Jeremiah Hill, he's been able to give you 16.5 points, 5 boards. Not a guy that lights it up from three-point range. As Ball State as a whole, they shoot about 34% from three-point range. It's right around country average with that regard, but Mikey Pearson, who last year shot north of 40% from 3, he's down to just 24.9% from three-point range, as it's been Juan Sebastian Gordecito who's really stepped up for the team from three-point range. 44% three-point shooter, 10 points per contest. But a lot of guys like Jeremiah Hernandez, Ethan Britton Watts in the backcourt be able to step up, give this team some nice production there, with Sparks being able to up his game down low, as this team has been in the bottom 15 in all of college basketball with regards to block shot rate, and with Ball State being so amazing at getting to the free throw line. They're a top 10 team in the country in terms of free throw attempts per game. I do think that they find a way to hold within this one, especially against an Ohio team that just has not been able to guard the perimeter. I did set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points. I wrote it up with Ball State. With regards to total, I did set mine at a 149.5. Neither of these teams super duper up tempo. It is an Ohio team that does a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers, and I do think that Ball State is going to hold to a lot of one and done opportunities. At Ball State, about 226th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So do like the under and the points here. with Ball State 6-13, 6-14 on the betting board. Kent State plays us to Western Michigan. And Western Michigan, a pretty sizable underdog here of 13.5 points, and your totals between 138.5 to 139, and wrote this one up as well. I am in on this total under. Semi-total 128.5. Kent State has been just absolutely tremendous with regards to their defense. They're a top 20 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They sped up a little bit recently, but it's not like they're playing at warp speed. They're about 285th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So they do a nice job holding things down there. And Western Michigan, not a lot to write home about on offense. 240th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And the big reason why they haven't been able to do a lot on offense, they have been terrible from three-point range. This team is right now shooting 27.5% from three-point range. That's a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. They haven't been able to get a nice shot in the arm, though, ever since Chauncey Willis has come into the fold. He's been back for the last 7 games in his first 8 or so of the campaign. He's given the team 15 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, a steal per contest. So he also does turn the ball over about 3.5 times per contest. Owen Lobsinger at 6'8", he's been able to throw in their double figures, 6+ rebounds per game. And ever since Willis has come into the lineup, it's been a little bit better for the team, but still they've been able to bust through the 71-point plateau in just 2 out of these last 7 games. So it's not like they've been able to do a ton there. We have seen the defense actually diminish quite a bit as well. They have yet to give up fewer than 76 points in a game ever since he has come back. But I do think that this is going to be one of those games where that could be going nowhere, because Kent State, they themselves, one of the worst three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, 363rd out of 364 D1 teams. They're right now shooting about 27.5% from three-point range. Just been unsightly with that regard. On Cameron Davis, he's able to give you about 16.5 points per contest, but I think outside of Morgan Stafford, who's right now dealing with an injury, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 points per game that is shooting above 28.5% from three-point range. Jalen Sullinger has been coming in off the bench a little bit more, 10.5 points. He's not shooting the same way from three-point range as he has in past years, but what this Kent State team is doing is they're doing a nice job hitting the offensive glass. They've been a top 75 team in the country with regards to percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Silveron Hornbeak has been a big reason why, 8.7 rebounds per game, and they're also not allowing opponents to get a lot of those second chances as well, ranking in the top 125 with that regard as well. It's a Western Michigan team that, to their credit, they've been a top 65 team with regards to their rebound percentage. They've been able to generate a lot of second chances, but they shoot 66% at the free throw line. I do think that with the way that they match up on the boards, though, with Willis coming in for Western Michigan, I do think that they hold within this number. I set my line at a 10.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the points in this low-scoring slog. And with regards to my write-up, wrote up the under in this spot as I did set my total at a 128.5. So right now, the 138.5, 139, going to be taking a shot on the under. 615, 616 on the betting board. Eastern Michigan is on the road against Central Michigan. Central Michigan, 7-point favorites, 141.5 to 142.5 is your total, and did set Central Michigan as a 10.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it with them for the Central Michigan unit. It's been one that has seen a departure with regards to their defense. They are outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but we've also seen their three-point shooting rise up a little bit more as well. Not that it's amazing at 31%, but last year they were below 30% from the outside, as you've been able to get a lot of production of the backcourt duo of Jacoby Heady along with Anthony Pritchard. These two guys are combined for 26 points per contest. Pritchard's now shooting about 32% from three. Heady is giving you nothing from three-point range, but these two guys combined for about 3.5 steals per game, and the Central Michigan team plays a lot of sloppy games. They turn the ball over darn near 14 times per contest. They generate 13 turnovers per game, and even though the overall defense has been rough for Central Michigan, much of it has been on the inside. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, it's still respectable. I'm not going to call it great or anything like that, but they're allowing opponents at home to shoot only about 29.5% from three-point range, while Eastern Michigan is just getting blowtorched. 362nd in the country. They're allowing opponents to shoot north of 40% from three, though interestingly, they're allowing opponents to shoot 48.2% from three-point range at home, closer to 35.5% on the road. And you've got Jalen Tracy, who's been able to do a nice job giving you double figures along Deshaun Nelson. These were actually teammates while they were over at DePaul last season. Nelson has a little bit more of the well-rounded game in terms of hitting the boards and everything like that. Tracy has been able to shoot just below 40% from three-point range thus far this season, and has done a nice job of helping Christian Henry facilitate. These two guys combined for about 7 assists per contest, with Nelson 16 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but Nelson's 3.9 turnovers per game. That's a top 15 mark in terms of total turnovers per game. That's not a mark where you want to be towards the top of all of college college basketball in for this Eastern Michigan team as well. They've been able to do an okay job of not allowing a lot of offensive rebounds, but that's because teams are just hitting their first shot as well. They are 348th in the country in terms of opponents' field goal shooting percentage, though Eastern Michigan, they themselves are generating about 13 turnovers per game. Yusef Jihad has been an okay scorer off the bench with about 4.5 points per contest, but outside of your main four, Jalen Billingsley, Christian Henry, have been able to combine for about 26 points per contest to go along with Terry and Nelson, and then on the front of both Billingsley and Henry, both of these guys do shoot north of 36% from three. Outside of those four guys, one other guy gives you north of 4.5 points per contest, two guys give you north of 1.8 points per game. It's a very top-heavy team. And then on top of that, Central Michigan has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. Not going to call them amazing or anything like that, but Eugenis Jervisis has been able to give you 12.5 points, 6.5 boards. He had 6'10", has been able to shoot it quite well from three-point range thus far this season, as Kyler Vanderjagt as well. He's been a 35.5% three-point shooter, with Jarvisis more around about 33% from the outside as well, with having the versatility that you've got with Caden Vasco. Also give you about 5 boards, 2.5 assists, 7 points per contest. I do think that Central Michigan should be able to pull away. I do think that Central Michigan is going to prioritize a little bit more defense now this time of year, and it has been an Eastern Michigan team has been well outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, while you do have a Central Michigan team that still doesn't necessarily play super duper up tempo. They've been playing a little bit faster than in past seasons, but I'd say in terms of total possessions per game, Central Michigan still hovering right around about 200. So did set my total at a 138.5. I'm in on the under. And with regards to Central Michigan, willing to lay up to 10 with them. 6-17, 6-18 on the betting board. Illinois on the road against Indiana. Indiana's home underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. Totals between 157.5 to a 158. And with Illinois, I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite. Willing to lay up to 3 with them. You've got the Kasparas Kanuskis injury that has been certainly hurting Illinois, and sounds like he might be dealing with a little bit of an ailment, whether that be playing through it or on the sidelines for quite a while with the injury they suffered last week. But even without him, Illinois had that win against Penn State a few days ago against USC. That was a little bit less than savory, but I do think that even without him, they should be able to find a way to get the job done on the road with Tomislav Ivisic and the versatility of the true 7-footer being able to supply the seam with about 8.5 boards, 12.5 points per game, all while shooting 36% from three-point range. It is an Illinois team that leaves something to be desired from the outside. They're shooting as a collective about 33% from three-point range, and that's with Jakanuskis shooting 41.5% from three-point range. He's truly the only guy on the roster, other than Jake Davis, who only gives you about 2.5 points per contest, that shoots above 36% from three-point range, but Ben-Hugh Marikis has been able to come on strong recently, 9.5 points. He's been averaging double figures without Jakanuskis in the lineup. Will Riley is able to give you your versatility with 11 points per game. Shoots it okay from three-point range at 6'8", and for Indiana, it's been a little bit rough for them in terms of ball security. They've been turning the ball over less recently, but still, overall for the season, the team is turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game, and they only shoot 32% from three-point range. Umar Ballo has been rock solid down low. He's able to give you 14 points, nearly 10 rebounds, 1.8 blocks per contest. Malik Renew is able to give you about 14.6 boards, and he tries to shoot threes, but he only shoots about 18% from three-point range. Miles Rice is only shooting about 30% from the outside with 12.5 points per contest. Now, Luke Goody, a little bit of a revenge game here. He's been able to shoot about 37.5% from three-point range. He goes back to Illinois, and he's been able to give the team right around about 7 points per contest. He began his career over at Illinois, so a little bit of a revenge match up there. And even though Illinois has been having as rough of a time as they have with regards to their three-point shooting, this has still been a team that has been in the top 30 nationally in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and if you look at them in a road/neutral court setting, they have been in the top 25 with that regard as well. It is an Indiana team that has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job defensively when they've been at home. On the road, it's been a little bit more testy, and for this Illinois team, they still do rank in the top 20 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis as well, and that defense has traveled quite well this season as well, as Illinois allowing teams to shoot just 28.1% from three-point range. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball, while in Indiana at home, they allow opponents to shoot only about 28.5% from three. Big reason why I did my total 155.5. This is an Illinois team that they're looking to play up tempo. They're in the top 40 in terms of total possessions per game. Indiana has upped their tempo a little bit as well, but still not necessarily playing at a breakneck pace. But even though Indiana's been able to do a solid job on the glass, that backcourt turn the ball over, I think is going to be costly in this spot. So I'm going to be taking a shot on the under. And with Illinois, we'll lay up to 3 with them. 619, 620 on the betting board. It is Kentucky, and they play with Texas A&M. A&M does find themselves as an underdog of 6 to 6.5 points. On this game, it is 160, and I did set my line at a 6.5. This has been one that has moved all over the place. I saw this get as high as 7 in a few places, but at a 6 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Kentucky. This Kentucky team is just a completely different team when they are at home rather than on the road with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. As Kentucky overall this season, they're about 54th in the country, shooting 36.7% from three-point range, but 39.2% from distance at home. On the road, closer to about 32.1%, and their points per possession more than 15 points fewer when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. But this is a Kentucky team that when they are at home, they're a top 15 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and I do think that that is going to be continuing moving forward. As a matter of fact, it's actually closer to about 24 points more per 100 possessions that they score at home rather than on the road. And for Texas A&M, they're right now dealing with that Wade Taylor injury. He missed a few days ago, and if he plays in any capacity in this game, he's going to be much less than 100%. It's for a team that already is not great with their three-point shooting percentage, where the bread is buttered for Texas A&M is down low. They've been the number one team in all of college basketball the last 2 years in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, as they shoot 30.9% per three-point as a collective, 285th in the country, and Tariq Phillips has stepped up with 13 plus points per contest for the team, but he's a career less than 30% three-point shooter. Had a big game a few days ago against Oklahoma State from the outside, but past that, it's never really popped off throughout his career. But you've got a lot of guys down low that are able to hit the boards. You've got Solomon Washington, Anderson Garcia, Henry Coleman, all giving you at least 5 rebounds per contest. You've had Jace Carter provide some versatility, 5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Love what he's able to bring to the table, and this is a Texas A&M team that, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are a top 25 team in the country. They do generate quite a few turnovers. Top 50 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Phelps has been able to come up with 2.5 steals per game. That's been one of his main specialties, so has done a nice job holding up with that regard. But I do think that this is a spot where, for Texas A&M, deal with the injury to Wade Taylor, dealing with all that they've got with regards to the backcourt, just not being able to make their threes, and Kentucky being a good three-point shooting defense. They're a top 25 team in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. You've got Amari Williams, who's able to give you 8+ rebounds per game. Brandon Garrison has been able to throw in their 5 boards per contest as well. Not that this Kentucky team is the world's greatest rebounding team, but still, in terms of percentage of missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound at home, that's just 23.2%. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that they find a way to get the job done here. We'll be willing to lay up to 6 with Kentucky. 7 or more is my buy point on Texas A&M, but it's at a little bit of a lower total because of the way that Texas A&M plays on defense at a 152.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 6 here with Kentucky. 7 or more, that's a buy point for me on A&M. 621, 622 on the betting board. Alabama plays host to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss does find themselves as an underdog of 11 points. Your total on this game, 164. This actually opened up at a 9.5. I was not able to get in on the opener, but now that we're getting to 11, that's my buy point on Ole Miss. I did set them as an underdog of 10.5 points. Pretty much I was willing to lay anything of single digits with regards to Alabama, and then once we got north of 10, that was my buy point on Ole Miss. But for Ole Miss, this is one of the best teams in all of college basketball at taking care of the ball, top 10 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and still a good three-point shooting team. They shoot as a collective just under 36% from 3, with Sean Padula being the main headline guy. 14 points. He gives you a 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 2.3 steals per contest, all while shooting 40% from three-point range. Matthew Morrell has seen quite a bit of a drop-off with regards to his three-point shooting. This year, he's shooting just 31% from the outside. After last year, he was able to shoot well north of 40% from three-point range, but still, he was dealing with a little bit of an injury towards the beginning part of the season. He's been able to bounce back relatively well recently, and for this Ole Miss team, the big fear that you have is down low, because you do have to go up against Cliff Almaroy, along Grant Nelson, who are combining for about 13.5 rebounds per game, and this is an Ole Miss team that they've got Malik Dia giving you about 5.8 rebounds per game. Dre Davis has given you versatility with 5 boards, 10.5 points, a little bit over a block and a steal per contest, but it is a team that's well outside the top 100 with regards to rebound percentage. And for Alabama, they've just been a completely different defense when they've been at home rather than on the road. They're 14th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 25.4% from 3. Do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with that regard, but it is an Alabama team that's giving up about 16 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than when they are on the road. And you finally have Mark Sears being able to find his sea legs as well. He was a little bit rough to begin the season from three-point range. Still has been able to give the team 18 plus points per contest, but you can tell that three-point shooting just was not the same towards the beginning part of the season, and now that's been able to come back into form as he's been able to give out 4.5 assists per contest, now shooting about 36% from three-point range. You do need to get a little bit more moving forward out of Chris Youngblood in the 7 games that they've had him back since he came off the injury. Only about 7.5 points, shooting less than 30% from three-point range, but you've still been able to get good production out of the ancillary pieces like Aiden Hallway's coming in, giving in 11 points per contest, shooting 39% from three-point range, and just overall it feels like an Alabama team that has been able to right the ship ever since that win that they got against Oklahoma, closing up non-conference play, and have the competition that they played outside the conference as well, because they played an absolute gauntlet of a schedule playing against the likes of Oregon, Houston, Illinois, Purdue. I think that that's really built themselves up for SEC play better than other teams. But that said, I do think that now that we've moved to 11, we've just gone a skoge too far, set my line at 10.5. So at 11 plus, going to be willing to take those points with Ole Miss, and did set my total at 166.5. I do think that both of these teams have some success from 3, and that Alabama ridiculous three-point shooting defense at home goes downward just a touch. So in on the over, set my total at 166.5, and I'm going to be willing to take those points with Ole Miss. 623, 624 on the betting board. Auburn plays those to Mississippi State, and Mississippi State does find themselves as an underdog of 7.5 points to this game. It is 150.5 to a 152, and for Mississippi State, I set them as an underdog of 9.5 points. This is realizing that G&I Broome not going to be playing in this game. We shall see what is going to be happening with him moving forward, but certainly not going to be out there on the floor in this game. But Chaney Johnson, I think, is a guy that needs to step up, and he's a big reason why I'm still willing to lay it with Auburn. I also think that first game without G&I Broome, I think that this is going to be one of those spots where there's going to be a lot of Auburn guys that are going to want to prove something, because this is still a deep team. Like for Auburn, they had, when G&I Broome was out there, 6 different guys scoring in double figures. Now without G&I Broome, who was averaging 18 points, 2.5 blocks, 2.5 rebounds per game, they still have 5 different guys. They're averaging north of 10 points per contest, and Johnson is one of those guys. 10 points, doesn't really pop it from 3 the same way that Broome does, but he's still capable of shooting it from 3, gives you 2 assists, 5 rebounds per game. He's got some relatively good versatility, and stands right around about 6'7", 6'8", so obviously not as tall, but you know what, I do like what he's able to bring to the table for this team. And then still have Dylan Cardwell as a really good low post presence, gives you about 5.5 points, 4.5 boards. Not a guy that's going to stretch the floor or anything like that, but do like what he's able to give you. Even someone like JP Peaks, if you're going to give him a few more minutes. This was a guy that was a top flight scorer over at Furman when he was over there during the 2023-24 season with about 18.5 points per contest, and still have the likes of Todd Pettiford, Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, Chad Baker-Mazara. All these guys give you 10 plus points per contest. All of these guys have been able to shoot it well from 3-point range, as everyone except for Baker-Mazara shooting at least 42% from the outside at Auburn, number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. One of the top teams in all of college basketball with regards to their block shots per possession as well. And for Mississippi State, they should be able to have some success down low. This has been one of the top rebound rate teams in all of college basketball once again, headlined by Keshawn Murphy and Cameron Matthews, combining for about 14.5 rebounds per game. But we've noticed that their three-point shooting defense has gone downward a little bit outside the top 150 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, so that's a little bit of an issue. And they themselves, they are about 150th in the country. They shoot about 33% from three-point range when they're on the road. Not bad, not amazing. Josh Hubbard has been that main man. He's been able to give this team 18 plus points per contest, and it's an Auburn defense that has performed just so much better when they've been at home rather than on the road. On the road, Auburn is actually well outside the top 80 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You take a look at them at home, they're a top 10 defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're giving up about 25 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than when they are on the road. Riley Kugel's been able to step up, give you a little bit of scoring for this Mississippi State team, but it's been all sorts of inconsistent as well. So even with Broome out of the fold, I'm going to be willing to lay with Auburn. I did set Auburn with Broome in the lineup more around a 12 to 12.5 point favorite. I had to drop this to 9.5, but still in on this Auburn team. And with regards to total, set mine at a 153.5, as I do think that the backcourt is really going to shine for Auburn in this game. So in on the over, I'm willing to lay with Auburn. 625, 626 on the betting board. Marquette is on the road against DePaul. DePaul is a home underdog of 13 to 13.5 points, and your total on this game is 147.5. DePaul has been really bad in these step-up games. They have beaten up on some really, really awful competition, but I think now we're starting to get to that buy point on DePaul. I set them as an 11-point underdog. Not that I think that they're going to step up and get the job done outright on the money line, but this is still a DePaul team that they shoot it relatively well from three-point range. You've got David Skogman, who's got relatively good versatility. He's been able to supply the team with, in that neighborhood, about 7.5, 8 points per contest. Throws in there 6 boards, has been a little bit in and out of the lineup, but when he's been in there, he's been able to shoot about 41% from three-point range. And it's a DePaul team that does have Connor Enright, who's one of the better facilitators that you're going to find in the country. Does turn the ball for 3 times per contest, but 6.5 assists, 7.5 points per contest for this DePaul team. They shoot as a collective 37.5% from three-point range, and they haven't been doing a bad job on the boards as well. And that's the issue that you do have with Marquette. With Marquette, you lose Oso Ogudero in the offseason. They just really didn't have having a replacement for him. David Joplin has been able to come in, give the team about 5.5 boards, and I like his 14 points per contest. Cam Jones has been that main man in the backcourt, and he's really done a good job of being able to fill the shoes of Tyler Kolek. 19 points, 6.5 assists, shoots about 35% from 3 points. For a Marquette team that they're not amazing from 3-point range. They shoot about 33% from 3. What has been amazing about them is their turnovers. They're a top 15 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, while they're a top 10 team at being able to protect the ball with regards to fewest turnovers on the offensive side of things. The Marquette rebounding is starting to come along for the ride, but still outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. That said, you've got Ben Gold, who's been able to give you 8 points. He shoots 36% from 3-point range with some size. Chase Ross, Stevie Mitchell, they combine for about 23 points. They're both shooting north of 40% from 3-point range as well, but I think that DePaul still going to find a way to be able to hold in this game. Fully recognize that things have been less than savory for DePaul with regards to their 30-point shooting defense as well. Outside the top 325 in all of college basketball in that regard. Did sell my total at 151. I do think that both of these teams knocked down quite a few shots in this game. Marquette, still a relatively up-tempo team. I'm not going to say that they play at warp speed or anything like that, but both of these teams have cranked things up a little bit more. DePaul about 129th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Marquette in that neighborhood about 175th, which is on par with what they did last season. So I'm going to be in on this total over, and I'm willing to take north of 11 here with DePaul. 627, 628 on the betting board. It is VCU, and they're going to be playing us to St. Louis. And St. Louis does find themselves as a underdog of 8.5 to 9 points total on this game, between 145.5 to 146.5. St. Louis, the last team in the A-10 to suffer a loss in conference play, but I think that they take it on the chin here. I said VCU as 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Now for St. Louis, things do appear to be getting much better for the team after the beginning part of the season was also tremendous, to say the least. A big-time ailment with Robbie Avila that really, you could tell, was causing this offense to be a little bit stagnant, but he's been able to get back into full form as it's a top-heavy offense. Robbie Avila, Gibson Jimerson, Isaiah Swope, I'll give you between 17.8 and 18.8 points per contest. Avila at right around about 6'10" or so. He's been able to shoot 37% for 3. Jimerson continues to shoot 42% from the outside, but outside these main three guys, you've got Kalu Anya, who's able to give you darn near 10 rebounds per game, but this is a unit that is outside the top 150 with regards to rebound percentage, and this VCU team is just an absolute bear to go up against offensively. They are number 13 in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. At home specifically, they are number 7 with this regard, and for St. Louis, you tell that the defense is not there, even when Josh Schertz was coaching up Indiana State. Not like that Indiana State team was anything to write home about defensively, 198th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, this is a VCU team that has been a little bit loose with the ball. They've been turning the ball over 12 plus times per contest, but I like what you're getting in the backcourt from these guys like Max Shulga, and Shulga has been really the most versatile guy on the roster. He's able to dish out for you right around about 4 assists, 6 rebounds, 15.5 points per game. They bring in Philip Russell, who's been their main sharpshooter at 38% from 3, though Shulga, he himself, shoots about 41% from 3, but they do need to cut down on the fact that they have been turning the ball over a little bit north of 12 times per contest, but VCU also a top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They've also been one of the better 3-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. VCU allowing opponents to only shoot right in that neighborhood about 30.5% from 3-point range, and they themselves only shoot about 31.5% from the outside, despite the fact that you've got Shulga and Russell shooting it quite well from 3-point range, but that 3-point shooting defense helps do a nice job of being able to mitigate things. And St. Louis giving up quite a few second and third chances on the glass as well. That's very concerning. St. Louis outside the top 140 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, with VCU having Jack Clark down low, giving about 6 rebounds per contest. They allow opponents to only get about 24.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound when they are at home. So I do think that VCU going to do a nice job finding a way to be able to get the job done, generate some turnovers on a St. Louis team that has seen Robbie Avila turn the ball over quite a bit more this season than he did 8 seasons ago. That's a little bit of a concern. And when you look at home numbers and home numbers only, VCU has been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to hold down from the 3-point arc as well. So this is a game where I do think that VCU is going to do a nice job defensively. I did set my total at a 143.5. Right now seeing that 145.5, 146 in on the under, and willing to lay double figures with VCU, set them as an 11.5 point favorite. 629, 630 on the betting board. Louisville's on the road against Syracuse. Syracuse is a home underdog of 7 to 7.5 points. Tonight's game is 151 after 152. Made my number 7. So at a 7.5, that becomes my buy point on Syracuse. Just big that J.J. Starlin's back in the fold. He is by far the best offensive producer for the Syracuse team. He's been able to give them 16 plus points per contest, and the team is just not able to function without him. He's actually closer to 20 points per game with what he's done over the last few games. And for Syracuse, they just don't have a lot of outside shooting. They're shooting 29% from 3-point range. Starlin himself is only shooting about 27% from 3, but he's able to give you 3 assists. He's able to chip in their 4 plus boards per contest. As it's a Syracuse team that has been been one of your better rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Eddie Lampkin has stepped in. He's giving you about 10 points, 8 boards. He actually doles out 2.5 assists per game as well. Donnie Freeman has been able to give you about 13.5 points, 8 rebounds per game as well, but this team not generating the same amount of turnovers that they did a season ago. Last year, this was actually like a top 50 team in terms of turnovers for us on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 300 thus far this season. Then when it comes to this Louisville unit, it's just all about finding some three-point shooting with them. They're still outside the top 315 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, as Rain Smith has shot 39.5% from 3, 13.5 points per contest, and Javon Hadley shoots about 34% from 3. These are like the lone two guys on the roster that shoot about 30.5% from the outside. Chucky Hepburn has been versatile, 15 points, 5.5 assists, 2.5 steals per contest, so his three-point shooting has obviously taken a little bit of a step back. Now, if you lay the points with Louisville, here's one thing that you can feel good about. Each of your top 5 scorers have been able to shoot at least 75% of the free throw line. Now, one of those is Keyshawn Pryor, is out for the season, but they've done a nice job at the charity stripe being able to knock down those shots. And James Scott is shooting 85% from two-point range and 82.5% from the floor overall. So that's been pretty solid for a Louisville team that they do need to guard the three-point arc better themselves. They're allowing opponents to shoot 35% from three-point range. That's outside the top 250. And this has been a Louisville team that, even though they don't necessarily have ideal size, they've been a top 75 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. And it's a Louisville team that's starting to step up to the plate a little bit more defensively. Top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while the Syracuse team more on 222nd, but Syracuse also allowing about 15 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. I did set my total 153. I do think that both of these teams start to get a little bit more going from three-point range, so in on the over and at 7.5 plus, won't take those points with Syracuse. 631, 632 on the betting board. Here's another game that I wrote up as Georgetown is on the road against St. John's. The Red Storm do find themselves as a favorite of 10 points on this game between 143 to 144. I took the points in this spot with Georgetown. I wrote that up. I set them as a 7.5 point underdog. St. John's has been a really good defensive team, but so has Georgetown. St. John's 14th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Georgetown is 16th, and this Georgetown team has had Thomas Sorber do a really good job down low for them. He's able to supply you with 12 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game. Now, you need to clean up the turnovers in the backcourt. They've been turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, but they're also a top 85 team in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis as well, and where they've really shined is inside. They're a top 10 team in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and you take a look at the flip side, and you've got a St. John's team that they're only shooting about 30% from three-point range. You're outside the top 275 in the country with that regard, so they're looking for a lot of their points on the inside. As a matter of fact, in terms of three-point attempts per game, they're about 300th in all of college basketball, while they're in the top 10 in terms of two-point shot attempts. So this actually plays, in my opinion, to Georgetown quite well. You've got R.J. Lewis, who's been able to give the St. John's team about 17.5 points per contest, but he's only shooting about 24% from three-point range. Davion Smith has been your main three-point shooter. He's actually shot 41% from three. He, along with Kadari Richmond, are combining for, in that neighborhood, about 5 assists per contest, 11 rebounds. Both of these guys approximately 10.8 points per contest. And Simeon Wilcher has been able to give you a bit more from the outside as well. 9.5 points, shoots about 33% from three-point range. But I think that Georgetown, with having Malik Mack, being able to calm down the turnovers just a little bit more, they should be able to hold in this spot. To see Micah Peavy have been able to combine for 27 points, 9 assists between the two of them, and you've also been able to get 3.5 steals per contest out of both of these men. You've got Jaden Epps, who's able to shoot about 39% from three-point shot with a little bit of injury towards the beginning part of the season, but it's come back strong. It is a bit of top-heavy Georgetown team, so they're going to need to avoid foul trouble. That said, I do think that they hold in this game. One that I think is going to be a little bit lower scoring, despite the fact that you've got two relatively mid-tempo teams here. Neither team is going to gun it. Neither of these teams are necessarily too slow, so my total 141.5. I'm in on the under, and I wrote up the points with Georgetown. 633, 634 on the betting board. Belmont is going to be playing also Valparaiso. Valparaiso is a 6.5 to a 7-point underdog. Total on this game between 158 to 158.5. Made my total 162.5. I do like the over. This is a Belmont team that's just absolutely gunning it, top 55 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and both of these defenses leave something to be desired. You've got a Valparaiso team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis is 237th. Belmont well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well, but this is a Belmont team that's just absolutely stroking it from three-point range to make up for the fact that they are 276th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. If you're looking at home games and home games alone, they are well outside the top 300, so it's been a little bit of an issue. That said, this is a Belmont team that you've got Carter Witt out there in the backcourt who's done a nice job doling out good, clean offense. He's been able to give you 4+ assists per contest. He's thrown in their double figures, but Jonathan Pierre, who was a part of that Division II North Southeastern team that won the title a few seasons ago, 14 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting 40% from three-point range. Tyler Lundblade has been able to shoot 46.5% from three. He's starting to regress a little bit from three-point range, but So this guy has been a flamethrower, and then Brody Peebles, who comes on over from Liberty. One-trick pony. He gives you only about 9 points per contest. Doesn't give you a lot in terms of rebounding or anything like that, but he's been able to do a nice job offensively for this team, and it's a big reason why I did set Belmont as an 8.5-point favorite. I'm willing to lay it just because I think that their offense is just flat out better than that of Valparaiso. Now, Valparaiso does a nice job not turning the ball over. They're turning the ball over less than 11 times per contest because you've got Jefferson De La Cruz Monegro, who's been able to do a nice job with 12.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest, and you also get nearly 3 assists per contest out of Darius DiViero, but we've seen much less of him recently, and we've seen a little bit more of All Right. His first name is All, his last name is Right, and he has been all right for this team, giving you about 11 points per contest, shooting 37% from 3, and for Valparaiso, if they do find themselves in a nip-and-tuck situation on their top 7 scorers, all but one of them do shoot at least 76.5% at the free throw line. They've actually been one of the best free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. It's 79.5% as a collective. That's the top 15 mark. You've got Cooper Schwieger down low, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, a block and a half per contest, so love what he's bringing to the table. Overall, it's a team that shoots about 34% from 3, but it is a unit as well that they don't really generate a lot of turnovers. They do allow you to be able to grab quite a few boards, as well as they don't necessarily do the most imposing job with regards to the glass as well, and they only shoot about 49.5% from inside the arc. That's outside the top 250 nationally. So I do think that for Belmont, they do find a way to be able to pick apart a Valparaiso team that's been okay with regards to guarding the 3-point arc, but has been a team that overall has placed a lot of ball pressure on teams. I do think that Belmont finds a way to get their up-tempo style and get the job done. I did set my total at a 162.5. I'm in on this little over. And with regards to Belmont, I'm willing to lay up to 8 with them. 635, 636 on the betting board. It is UTSA. Meet the Roadrunners at the road to face off against Rice. We give our over to Lane Kiffin go Owls as Rice is a 5 to 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is 146.5. I did set my total here at a 145.5. I'm in on the under. Big reason why Rice has been really slowing things down. They're outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. UTSA, they're looking to speed things up. They're in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game, but Rice has been outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They've made up for that with the fact that they have been tremendous offensively. This team, 62nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You have seen Rob Lanier come in and really put his imprint on this team. UTSA, well, they are not that. They are currently 293rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but this is a UTSA team that's still pretty solid at being able to pickpocket, and the main reason why is that you look at the transfers on the roster along with Austin Clonch, a guy that was spending some time over on the Alabama coaching staff, and he's really done a nice job of getting his team to just play fast and frenetic, the old 40 minutes of HE double hockey sticks sort of style. As UTSA generating about 16 turnovers per contest. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball in terms of per possession, more in the top 50, but Primo Spears has been one of the better scorers in all of college basketball in the top 12 nationally with 21.5 points, shoots 36% from 3-point range. Marcus Millender shoots 37% from the outside with about 11 points per contest, and Terrion Joseph missed the first 6 games of the season. He's come back. He's given the team about 11.5 points per game. Now, where the kryptonite is for this team is down low. You've had Janavia Smith do a nice job hauling in there about 8 rebounds per game, and Raquan Horton is giving you about 7 boards, and Smith, to his credit, he actually shoots about 42.5% from 3-point range, but the team has been banged up with Jaquan Scott being in and out of the lineup all season long. You've had Mo Nanji be relatively inconsistent as well, and then on the flip side for this Rice unit, it's been a case where they've had to run everything through Trey Borneau, who comes over from USC Upstate, and he's been a do-it-all guy. 13.5 points. He's able to give you about 6 boards, 4 assists per contest, but also turns the ball over about 3 times per game. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, Rice outside the top 250 with that regard, and they only shoot about 31.5% from 3-point range, and it's a big way of being able to get to this UTSA team, a UTSA team that is outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing them to shoot about 37% from the outside. It is a team that fouls quite frequently as well, so that should be able to help out Rice just a skoge as well. But Rice, they're about 300th in the country, shooting about 67.5% the free throw line. Kellen Amos is giving 9.5 points, 3 assists per contest, but shoots less than 30% from 3-point range. Elm Jusinovic, he's been able to shoot about 40% from 3, but that's how you don't have a lot from the outside. It is a Rice team, though, that I do think that they're going to be able to put the clamps on defense. To the credit of Rice, they're a team that allows you to shoot only about 30.5% from 3-point range. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball, and this has been a Rice team that has been giving up about 9.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road, and for Rice, this has been a team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers themselves. So, do think that you get a sloppier game here. I did set my total at a 145.5, so at a 146 or higher, I'm in on this total under, and with Rice, willing to lay up to 5 points with them. 637, 638 on the betting board. Evansville is on the road against Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa at 12.5 to a 14-point favorite, and your total on this game, finding it at a 132.5 to a 133.5, and with Northern Iowa, made them a 15.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This has been an Evansville team that has been really a wreck all season long. They're outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and on the road, they're currently shooting a hearty 19.4% from three-point range. That is dead stinking last in all of college basketball, and they've been dealing with quite a few injuries. Gabe Pizzato, who was their main scorer towards the beginning part of the season, was giving the team 13-plus points per contest. He is currently out of the fold for this team. Now, you've been able to have a few guys be able to step up down low for this team, but I still want to see a little bit more from their power conference transfer and Connor Turnbull. Turnbull stands 6'10", 5.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game for a guy that began his career at Butler. I was just expecting a little bit more out of him. Tayshaun Comer, Cameron Huffner, these two guys have been able to combine for about 26 points per contest, been able to get about 3.5 assists per contest as well out of Mr. Comer, and he's been able to shoot more in that neighborhood, about 25% from three-point range, so that's been less than savory. Tanner Cuff has been versatile, 9 points, 6 boards, pretty much the only guy on the roster shooting about 34.5% from three-point range as well, and it's an Evansville team that, while they don't shoot it well from three-point range, they do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point arc. They've been allowing opponents to shoot only about 31% from three-point range, but they just haven't been necessarily the same defensive unit when they've been on the road rather than when they have been at home. The three-point shooting percentage has actually went northward, but if you look at the points allowed on a per-possession basis, they have been right around about 160th, but giving up more like 10.3 points more per 100 possessions when they are on the road. And this is a Northern Iowa team that is getting back to the roots. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game for Northern Iowa. They've stepped it up a little bit more defensively as well. Not to call them amazing. They're about 184th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're doing a relatively solid job on the interior of not allowing you to get second chance opportunities as well. Jacob Hudson is 6'11". He's been able to pop it at nearly 40% from three-point range. He's given the team 8+ points per contest, throwing in their 5 rebounds per game. Titan Anderson has really been able to help tighten up with regards to this defense as well. He's been able to give you about 13 points, throws in their 6+ rebounds per game, as in terms of percentage of missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, Northern Iowa in the top 70 in all of college basketball. At home, they're allowing opponents to grab only about 22.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and Northern Iowa has been one of your better three-point shooting teams among mid-majors in all of college basketball as well. This is a team that has collective. They're shooting in that pocket about 37.5% from three-point range, with having Leon Bond stepping up in a big way, 35.5% three-point shooter, 11.5 points, 5 rebounds per contest, and then Trey Campbell, 46% three-point shooter, 11 points per contest. His three-point shooting goes up to right around about 40% at home, with them doing the job that they're doing on the board. So they themselves don't really get a lot of second chance opportunities. They're well outside the top 330 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. I do think that they keep things low scoring, and they just keep Evansville off the board with regards to being able to make shots. I set my total at 131.5. I'm in on the under, and with Northern Iowa, want to lay up to 15 with them. Set them as a 15.5 point favorite. 639, 640 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, Wichita State is going to be playing us to Charlotte. Charlotte is an underdog of 9.5 to 10 points. So on this game between 150 to 151. Wrote this up when Charlotte was an 11-point dog. Still like it here, though. As I said, Charlotte as a 6.5 point underdog. Wichita State is just simply a team that relies upon three-point shooting, and they don't shoot it from three well. At home, they're shooting a nice, clean 27.5% from three-point range. That is outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Wichita State should have a little bit of an advantage down low with Quincy Ballard. Give you double figures, 7 boards, north of a block per contest, but for this Wichita State unit, it just feels like a bunch of misfit pieces. Like, I like their overall roster. Xavier Bell has been able to give you 16 points per contest. Corey Washington, 13 points, 7 boards per game. Justin Hill, he's been able to throw in there about 14 points per game as well. So, I mean, these guys are all pretty rock solid. They've been without Ronnie DeGary for much of the season as well, but Sean Cortez has given you no scoring. AJ McGinnis, I thought that he was going to be a nice three-point shooter for the team, and he shot 36% from three, but only about 4 points per contest as well. It just feels like things are not meshing for this team, and for Wichita State, while they don't do a good job of shooting it from three-point range, they're allowing opponents to shoot about 35% from three-point range. That's well outside the top 225 in all of college basketball, and you've got a Charlotte team that they themselves have actually done a nice job of being able to guard the perimeter. Charlotte is allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range in that neighborhood about 30%. That goes down to 20.2% on the road, and for Charlotte, you do have some nice versatility with this team, as they've had Robert Braswell at 6'7", 6'8", shooting the high 30s from three-point range. He's able to contribute double figures. Charlotte is still a slow and controlled team, by the way, outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Nick Graves being your top scorer, supplying 17 points. He doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, but Giancarlo Rosado, he doesn't take too many threes. He's only taken like 10 all season long, but he's shooting 44% from the outside on those. He's been able to give you 12 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, was a part of that FAU team that made the Final Four a few seasons ago. He was in the shadow of Vladislav Golden down low. Kylan Blackman has only been able to give you about 5.5 points per contest, but still a relatively good guy at being able to get to the hole, being able to find some buckets there. Has shot only about 25% from three after Coastal Carolina last season. Was quite a bit better there, but this is a Charlotte team I think is going to be able to maintain in this sort of a circumstance for Wichita State. Not necessarily doing an amazing job of being able to generate second and third chances. They should have the advantage down low with regards to rebounding with Ballard, but again, with this team not being able to shoot it well from three-point range, with Wichita State really not providing a lot of ball pressure in general, and Charlotte has only turned the ball over less than 10 times per contest. They've been a top 50 team with regards to ball security. I do think that they're going to be able to get some good, clean looks and be able to hold in this game. I did set my line at a 6.5, so I was willing to take the points with Charlotte at 11, so like it here at 9.5 to 10, and with regards to this total, did set mine at a 148.5 with Wichita State's lack of three-point shooting and Charlotte playing so slowly. So in on the under, and I'm willing to take those points with Charlotte. 641, 642 on the betting board. Little Rock is on the road against Southeast Missouri State. SEMO is a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 136 to 136.5. I said SEMO is a 1.5 point favorite. Here at 2+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Little Rock. Little Rock has done just such a good job defensively, and it's really blown me away what they've been able to do there, as they are turning the ball over 15 times per contest. They're outside the top 320 in terms of ball security, but they are clocking in 63rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Southeast Missouri State has really improved that defense as well. They're now up to a top 175 mark in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. With both of these teams, they've done a relatively solid job of being able to guard the perimeter, where I think that the Southeast Missouri State team is going to have a little bit of a tough time is down low. As you've got Teddy Washington, who's been very versatile, coming in from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. He's done a nice job giving the team 12+ points, 6+ boards, 2.5 assists, a steal, a block. He does a little bit of everything, but for Southeast Missouri State, just not a lot of size, which has led to them being 330th in the country with regards to their rebound percentage. Now, Little Rock not a whole heck of a lot better. They're about 294th in all of college basketball, but Jonathan Lawson is someone that stands more around about 6'5", 6'6", and he has really been the ringleader for this Little Rock team, as he's been able to supply the team with a little bit north of 3.5 assists per contest, 15 points per game. He's shooting 40% from three, and Milwaukee Wilkerson, who comes in from LSU, 39% three-point shooter at 6'5", good versatility, a block and a half, a steal and a half, 15 points per game. As a matter of fact, Lawson and Wilkerson combined for about 3.5 steals per contest. Little Rock, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, have been in the top 50 in all of college basketball, and they've done a nice job holding down from both the interior and the exterior. They're in the top 50 nationally in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're allowing a few too many second and third chance opportunities, but overall they've been able to do a nice job on this front, and they've been doing so all without KK Robinson, their top scorer from a season ago, not playing a single game for the team as well. So they've really been able to hold up with that regard. I do think that for Southeast Missouri State, that home court advantage is still going to be reigning a little bit supreme for them, and you saw the nice ancillary scorers like BJ Ward has chipped in their 9.5 points per contest. I love what Rob Martin is bringing to the table, 36% three-point shooter, 11 points per contest, and down low you've been able to get a little bit more out of Brendan Terry, who's been able to give you about 9.5 points, throws in their 4 boards per contest as well. So in the end, I do think that Southeast Missouri State going to be able to find a way to get the job done, especially due to the fact that their biggest weakness is that they do foul a lot, and this is a Little Rock team that at the free throw line thus far this season, they're shooting as a collective right around about 67% the free throw line outside the top 300. So I do think that free throw shooting got you with Little Rock, and both of these teams outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game caused me to set this total at a 133.5. So I'm in on the under, and I had 2+ taking the place with Little Rock. 643, 644 on the betting board. Creighton plays us for Providence. Providence does find themselves as an underdog of 9 points. On this game, 144.5. Wrote this one up as well. I wrote up the under. We got a Providence team that's outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Entering into Monday, they were 300th in the country, and both of these teams are okay offensively, but they're not great offensively. They're both hovering right around about 120th, 130th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, Creighton does not generate any turnovers whatsoever. They're in the bottom 50 in the country with that regard, but they're outside the top 275 in terms of taking care of the ball as well. They're turning the ball over 13 times per game. I love what Steve Ashworth brings to the table. He's been able to give you 14 plus points per contest, 5 boards, 5 assists, shoots it relatively well from three-point range. Just Creighton has been able to find their seed legs, now shooting above 34% from three-point range once again. And for Providence, surprisingly, each out of your top 3 scorers, because Bryce Hopkins just remains out for the team, are shooting at least 38.5% from three-point range, with Jaden Pierre, Bentley Joseph combining for 26 points per contest. As a collective, those two guys shoot about 82% at the free throw line as well, with about 5.5 assists per game, but just don't have a lot of depth with this team. Jabari Abdul-Rahim, who comes on over from Georgia, I was expecting way more than 5.5 points at 27.5% three-point shooting. Now, you're getting more down low out of Uswin Urtho Husne. Hopefully I said that correctly. 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, a block and a half per contest, so he's been able to give a little bit more of something there. It is a Providence team that, with regards to both opponents' two-point shooting percentage and three-point shooting percentage, they've been a top 80 team in all of college basketball. Reason why their defense has been a little bit lackadaisical, though, they're only generating 8.8 turnovers per game. That's a bottom 15 mark in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis in all of college basketball. So both of these teams have turnover issues on offense. Neither of these defenses really generate turnovers, but Providence is looking to play at a super slow, super controlled pace. They do a nice job of being able to lock you down with regards to being able to get clean looks, and Ryan Kalkbrenner in step-up games just has not been amazing, in my opinion. He's still giving the team 17.5 points, 8 rebounds per game, but he's done a lot of this against, shall we say, lesser competition. Without Pops Isaacs, you've seen Jackson McAndrew really step up 9 points per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range at 6'10", and I do think that size and versatility just going to be able to get to Providence in this spot, especially with Providence just not generating turnovers whatsoever. So it is a circumstance where I did set my line at 10, especially with Providence's inability to get to the free throw line in this game. Creighton in the top 10 in the country in terms of free throw attempts allowed. I do think that Creighton gets the job done at home. Willing to lay the 9, and I wrote up the total on this game. I'm in on the under, set by total 138, 645, 646 on the betting board. It is Boise State, and they're playing host to Wyoming. Wyoming does find themselves as 14.5 to 15-point underdogs. So on this game, 134 to 134.5. I set my line at 11.5, and I thought that I was being generous of Boise State. I'm willing to take the points. Do have to wonder how Boise State is going to be coming off of that, shall we say, heartbreaker a few days ago. They lose that game on Utah State, having that ball that bounced all around and went down, and both teams in that game could not miss from three-point range. Prior to that game, you saw Boise State only shooting about 30.5% from three-point range, and it's a Wyoming team that's pretty rock solid on defense. They're a top 75 unit in the country with regards to a rebound percentage, as you've got Obi Ajim, who's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with about 18.5 points per game. He shoots 46% from three-point range. Wyoming as a whole, they shoot about 36.5% from the outside. Biggest thing for this Wyoming team, need to calm down the turnovers. They're turning the ball over in the about 300th range in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That's been a little bit less than savory, but I like what you're getting down low on Jordan Nesbitt. 9 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists per contest. Kobe Dutton has been able to throw in their 9.5 points per game as well. And then A.J. Willis, he doesn't give you a ton of scoring, but he's shooting 48% from three-point range. You just have a lot of guys on this team that really know their role, and for Boise State, Tyson Dagenhart has been that guy for them, as time and time again steps up, gets the job done with about 18 points, 6 boards. He's now shooting above 30% from three-point range after a rough start to the season. But among your top 5 scorers, only one guy, Javon Buchanan, shoots above 42.5% from the outside. Buchanan has really been able to emerge for the team. 10.5 points. He's able to give you about 6 boards per contest as well. And Alvaro Cardenas has been able to give you 7 assists, steal and a half per contest. So love what he's been able to bring to the table as well. But it's a Boise State team that, again, they shoot about 31.5% from three-point range. His defense has been okay, but it hasn't been as amazing as we've seen in past years. They don't generate a lot of turnovers, so Wyoming is not going to be thrown out of sorts here. For Wyoming, they're only generating about 10.8 turnovers per game. That's outside the top 250 nationally, and this has been a Wyoming team that has been solid with regards to their defense. I'm not going to call it amazing. There's points allowed on a per possession basis. They're about 143rd, but I do think that this is going to be a slow, rather controlled game. Boise State, as per usual, well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. This is not a Wyoming team that's really looking to push the tempo either, with Wyoming 321st in the country with this regard. Did set my total out of 135.5, as I do think that Wyoming has a propensity to hold in this game. And again, Boise State just not the same team defensively that we've seen, and Wyoming should get more clean possessions than we've seen in past games. So I am going to be willing to take the points here with Wyoming, and I'm in on this total over 647, 648 on the betting board. Kansas State plays those to Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a road favorite of 6 to 6.5 points. Dawn's game is 146.5. I set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Kansas State. I have been very off put by what I've seen out of Kansas State, and I do think that Texas Tech gets the job done outright, but this is also a Texas Tech team that you tell that their numbers are very much warped from what we saw in non-conference play. They played up against a whole bunch of cream puffs, and if you look at Texas Tech with regards to their home numbers compared to their road numbers, there's really not a lot of comparison, as Texas Tech over overall for the season, still a top 50 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, if you take a look at what they're giving up at home versus what they are giving up on the road, it's just really not much of a comparison, as Texas Tech is giving up about 15.8 points more per 100 possessions when they are on the road rather than when they are at home. And we've started to see their three-point shooting percentage, which has still been sterling, 7th in all of college basketball, start to wane just a little bit in those road games. They're shooting 42% from three at home, more like 35.5% away from home. You still have Elijah Hawkins, who's giving you 5+ assists per contest. He's been able to give the team double figures, and now you've got JP Toppin back in the fold. As for Toppin, he has been incredible, being able to give the team 13+ points, 10+ rebounds per game. But I do think that Coleman Hawkins has some pride, and he has some fight for this Kansas State team, does a little bit of everything, being able to supply 10.5 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, a block and a half, 2+ steals per contest, and does shoot 32% from three-point. It's a backcourt that's an issue. Max Jones has been a solid shooter, making 37% of his threes, 9 points per contest. But with regards to Doug McDaniel, his numbers are fine. 4 assists at 2.5 turnovers per game, 9.5 points. He shoots only about 22.5% from three. That's less than fine, but he doesn't take a lot of threes. He does defer a little bit more to Brandon Housen, who's been able to shoot 40% from three-point range. But it just feels like things have not been necessarily clean in the backcourt without Akur, who went down with an injury about 8 games ago. CJ Jones has been able to give you a little bit of facilitation as well with about 2 assists per contest, but I do think that for Kansas State, they start to buckle down a little bit more defensively, because right now the big concern, they're allowing opponents to shoot 36+% from three-point range. That is outside the top 300 nationally. In terms of their interior defense, not as bad. They're about a top 125 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but also not generating a ton of turnovers as well. But the Texas Tech team, again, just has not been the same team when they have been on the road. I did set my total at 145. I do think that we start to see a little bit of regression with the Texas Tech offense, one that is outside the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game. So I'm in on this total under, and I'm going to be willing to take north of 5 here with Kansas State. 649, 650 on the betting board. It is Ohio State on the road against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin finds themselves as a favorite of 7 points. So in this game, you're going to be finding it right around about a 150.5 to a 151, and with Wisconsin made them an 8.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay this number with Ohio State. Their defense has been much different when they've been on the road rather than when they've been at home. At home, this has been a rock-solid defense, but they're giving up about 17.4 points more per 100 possessions when away from home. They're about 68th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Wisconsin's starting to slow down a little bit more, and that defense is starting to take a little bit more hold. They're overall for the season about 87th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this has been a Wisconsin team that hasn't even necessarily been great from three-point range as far this season, but they've still been a top 35 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. It's a Wisconsin unit that they shoot about 35.5% from three, which is good, but it's not necessarily amazing. They just have been really nice in terms of the little things, as they are number 1 in the country with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. They are shooting as a collective well north of 85% at the charity stripe, and they also don't beat themselves. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, this has been a team that's been in the top 40 in all of college basketball. Actually, as a matter of fact, in the top 20 of all of college basketball. And Bruce Thornton, on the flip side for Iowa State, he's been very good at being able to develop good, clean offense. He and John Michael Mobley have both been able to shoot well north of 40% from three-point range. By the way, for an Iowa State team that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, for Thornton, 17 points, shoots 44% from three-point range. Mobley, more around about 43.5% from the outside, 12 points per game. But this is a team that they leave a little bit of something to be desired down low. Devin Royal's been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game, and Ahmad Bradshaw, you just don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him. 8 points, 3.5 boards. He was away from the team for like 5 or 6 games, and when he's been out there, he just frankly has not lived up to his billing, though Quez Glover is starting to come on strong. He's not been able to shoot 50% from three-point range, albeit he's only taken 16 threes as far as this season, but he's been able to supply the team with 7 points per contest, so I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him, but this is also a unit that they just put you on the free throw line too much as well in terms of percentage of possessions for an opponent that result in a free throw. They are in the top 30 in all of college basketball in that regard, and with Wisconsin shooting it so well at the free throw line, it's going to be big because for Iowa State, they're actually allowing opponents to shoot only about 29.5% from three-point range. That's the top 40 mark in the country. In terms of overall field goal shooting percentage, they're in the top 40 in the country with that regard as well, but I do think that Wisconsin going to start to slow down just a little bit more with that tempo. They have been outside the top 275 in terms of possessions per game for a decade and a half. Right now, they're clocking in about 139th in the country, and this is not an Iowa State team that is slow, but it's not one that's looking to really crank up the tempo as well. They're about 70th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so Do you think that the defense locks in a little bit more here? Set my total 148.5, and on the under end, I'm willing to lay up to 8 here with Wisconsin 651, 652 on the betting board. Florida's going to be playing us in Missouri, and Missouri does find themselves as a underdog of 10 points, seeing an 11.5 out there as well. Total on this game is 155. I did set Florida as a 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. This was an opener of 11, so this has come down a little bit, but I've just been very impressed by Florida. Florida does not rely upon great three-point shooting to be able to have the success that they do. Matter of fact, they're about 138th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, this is a Missouri team that they do live and die a little bit more by the three ball. They're shooting about 37.2% from three-point range overall this season, but 39% at home, less than 28.5% on the road. They just do experience a big drop-off with that regard. The defense also has not been the same when they've been away from home as well. This is a Missouri unit that, in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, right now checks in 56th in the country, but they're giving up 19 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. And this Florida team has been a bull constrictor with their defense at home. Only Houston allowing fewer points per possession at home than this Florida team. Florida's really reined it in as well. I mean, they're playing up tempo, but it's not like they're playing super out of control and warp speed or anything like that. Missouri's really dialed it back as well. They're about 150th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Florida more in that pocket, about 77th in the country. I do think that this is going to be a bit of a higher scoring game as Missouri, I just alluded to it. The defense, it just has not been the same when they have been away from home. So I'm in on the over. I actually set my total at a 159.5. I do think that for Florida, they're going to be able to get a lot of second and third chances in this game as well. For Missouri, first 2 years under Dennis Gates, they were outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage, and they've been much better this year, not going to lie. You've got Mark Mitchell, who's been able to give you 5 boards, 13.5 points per contest. You've also been able to get in that neighborhood about 5.5 rebounds per game out of Josh Gray as well. He doesn't really give you a lot of scoring, but this is a unit in Missouri that does shoot about 37.5% from three-point range. But with regards to this Missouri team, they're allowing you to shoot north of 35% from three-point range as well. And when you've got guys like Walter Clayton, Elijah Mitchell, they're able to knock down these shots. With Clayton, he's been your main scorer, being able to supply 17 plus points per contest, but you throw in there the fact that when these guys do miss a shot, you've got someone like Thomas Howe, Alex Condon, that do a great job of being able to clean up the boards. Just in terms of offensive rebounds between the two of them, about 5.5 per contest. In terms of total rebounds, about 13.5. Condon has been able to give you 11 points per game. He's actually shooting 43% from three-point range himself. Meanwhile, Martin along Clayton, they both shoot about 35.5 to 36.5% from three-point range. Will Richard is able to throw in their 13 points per game. Really good depth with his team. Haven't even mentioned Ruben Chinelu, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, a block, 5.5 points per game. I do think that this is going to be a higher scoring game. I think that Missouri looks to crank up their tempo, but I think it's going to be to no avail. I set Florida as a 13.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay the number, and I'm in on the over, so my total at a 159.5. 653, 654 on the betting board. You've got Arkansas on the road against LSU. LSU is a home underdog of between 1.5 to 2 points. Dawn's game between 148 to 148.5. I wrote this up when LSU was a 1 point favorite, or I did my write-ups when LSU was a 1 point favorite, or else I would have written this up because I like LSU outright on the money line. On the opener, I thought that it was a pretty fair number with them being -1, but now that we've gotten to them being an underdog, I think that this is some wrong line movement. I just haven't liked what I've seen recently out of Arkansas. They lose at Bud Walton Arena over the weekend. Abdou Thiero has been rock solid with 17 points, 5 rebounds per game, and I know that with John Calipari, when things look the bleakest is typically when he's able to come up with his biggest efforts, and then when we have any expectations whatsoever for him, that's when things go down the toilet bowl. And Big Z has good versatility, 7 points, about 2 blocks. He's actually shot 44% from three-point range as well, but it's been all about Boogie Fland and DJ Wagner really being off with their shot recently. Overall for the season, they combined to shoot about 36% from three-point range. Fland has been able to give you 15.5 points, 6 assists per game, and DJ turned it up. Wagner has been able to give you about 10.5 points per contest, but you're still getting a big giant nothing burger out of John L. Davis. You can tell that it has not been a great season for either of their two versatile big men, as Jonas Adu has been able to give you about 6 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, starting to surge a little bit more. And Trevon Brazil starting to give you a tad bit more of something as well, but was expecting a bit more there. And for this LSU team, they're a top 40 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a unit that they do need to cut down on the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, outside the top 250 with regards to ball security, but when they get to the free throw line, shoot about 75% when they are there. They've been able to do a nice job on the boards as well, being a top 50 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, and a big reason why is what you've been able to get out of Corey Chess. Chess has come in. He's only giving you about 7.5 points per contest assists, but 7.3 rebounds per game. You've been able to have Dameon Collins do a nice job supplying the team with 8.5 points. He throws in their 4.5 boards, and when it comes to the three-point shooting, you've got Cameron Carter shooting darn near 40% from three, 17 points, 2.5 assists per game. You don't necessarily have one main facilitator, but Carter, Jordan Sears, Victorious Miller, all these guys have been able to do a rock-solid job of flowing good offense, and then Deji Bailey has actually been your main facilitator with about 2.8 assists, throws in their 10 points per contest as well. So these guys have been able to do a nice job playing off of one another. You've got relatively good depth as well. Even someone like Curtis Givens has been able to give you a little bit more as well with about 5 points per contest. For LSU, they've been a nice three-point shooting defense as well, allowing opponents to shoot only about 30.5% from three-point range. And I do think that for Arkansas, a team that just has not been the same team when they've been away from home throughout the years, and this season giving up about 22 points more per 100 possessions on the road rather than at home. I just don't think that they get the job done here. I do like LSU all right on the money line, and I do like the way that this LSU team is performing on defense, despite the fact that they are in the top 45 in terms of total possessions per game. I think that they hold up there, but I also do think that you get some late game fouling for the over. Semi-total 149.5. I like the over. I like LSU on the money line. 655, 656 on the betting board. Miami's on the road against Duke. Duke is a 23 to a 24.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 147.5. I said Duke is a 25-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Miami team is dead. I wish I could put it any other way, but they've been without their main facilitator and their main scorer, Nigel Pack, over the last few games, and that has caused things to really just toilet bowl. Ever since the interim coaching regime took over from Jim Larinaga, they have not won a single game. The offense has been hit or miss ever since the interim coaching regime has taken over. They've scored in 74-plus points in, I believe, 2 out of their 4 games. The other 2, they scored 65 and 68 respectively, but I mean, this is just a defense that's getting blowtorched. They have given up at least 75 points in now 7 straight games. This is a Duke team that ranks in the top 15 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Cooper Flagg leads the team in all 5 major categories, giving you 16 plus points per contest. His 3-point shot has been a little bit off this year, but it's been getting better as the season has went along. And right now for Miami, you've got Matthew Cleveland, who's been able to give you about 13.5 points per game, shooting 42% from 3-point range. Miami is still honestly a top 50 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This despite the fact that they're shooting about 31.7% from 3, but they're much more efficient at home rather than on the road. This team has actually been okay on the glass, with Lynn Kidd being able to supply the team with about 7.5 rebounds per game, throws in their 10 points per contest, but you can tell that these guys just have a little bit of quit in them as of right now. I wish I could put it any other way. Brandon Johnson, 8.7 rebounds per game, and I feel like this team just doesn't know what they are at this point, especially with Nigel Pack being out of the fold. Meanwhile, on the Duke side of things, you've got Tyrese Proctor, who hasn't done as much facilitating this year as I was expecting, but has become a nice off-the-ball scorer, shooting about 42% from 3, 11 points per contest. Con Kneppel has been able to give you 12.5 points. He's been able to do a rock-solid job there. Doesn't quite compare to the 19 points per game of Cooper Flagg, but you know what? With regards to this Duke team, you've also got Zion James with his versatility. 3 assists, 8 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Duke team that's done a really good job of cutting you off from 3-point range as well. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 31% from 3-point range, and when you take a look at their home numbers, like, nobody has shot well at Cameron Indoor. Even Duke has left something to be desired with their shooting at Cameron Indoor. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot only about 28.9% here, so I think that that's going to throttle down this total quite a bit. You've got a Miami team that's giving up points upon points, so it's a good old situation of something's got to give. I semi-total at 145. I think that Duke defense, with them being outside the top 240 in terms of total possessions per game, slows things down. Semi-total 145 in on the under, and I'm going to lay up to 24.5 here with Duke. 657, 658 on the betting board. Georgia Tech plays us at Clemson. Clemson is a road favorite of 4.5 points. Totals between 142.5 to a 143. I did set Clemson as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 4.5. I'm starting to like a little bit more of what I'm seeing out of Georgia Tech. You've got down low a guy that I like in Bay and Ongo, who's been able to give you some plus rebounds per game, and the team has been different ever since Xavier McCollum came back. He was out for a few games due to injury. He's been one of their top flight scorers as he has supplied the team with 12.5 points, thrown in their 3.5 assists, and shoots 40% from 3-point range. And Ndongo, he doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but throughout his career, he shot like 40% from 3-point range. All while Nathaniel George, who doesn't do a good job of shooting it from 3, but does a nice job facilitating, gives you 10 points, 6 assists per contest. And it's a Georgia Tech team that they don't get too far out of sorts. They only turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. This could be the difference, though. They shoot 66.8% the free throw line. That is outside the top 300 nationally. They should have collected about 34% from 3-point range. You've had Lance Terry be able to supply the team with about 15.5 points per contest, but take a look at the flip side and what you've been able to get out of Clemson, and this Clemson team should be able to win the battle down low. I've been loving what I've been seeing out of Ian Shefflin, as he's been able to give you good versatility. 12.5 points, a little bit over 10 rebounds. He actually shoots north of 30% from 3, and Chase Hunter shoots 45% from 3-point range, and for Clemson. They're never necessarily going to be lauded and applauded for their defense, but they've been able to come up with many more turnovers this year. They're now a top 80 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Again, not amazing, but they're about 70th in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, you've got a Georgia Tech team that's about 100th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, with Clemson having some nice ancillary pieces like Jake Heibretter, who's been able to shoot well north of 40% from three-point range, being able to get some good versatility as well out of Victor Locken. 10 points, shoots 37% from three at about 6'10", 6'11", 6 boards, a little bit over a block and a steal per contest, as well as Jaden Zachary helping facilitate the offense. All while Clemson only turns the ball over about 10.8 times per contest themselves. I do think that Clemson, who shoots 78% at the free throw line, that's a top 25 mark in the country, they find a way to get the job done in this spot. I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 here with Clemson. Made my total a 143, so here at the 142.5, also went on the over. 659, 660 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, BYU plays us Oklahoma State. Total on this game between 146.5 to a 147.5, and BYU is a 13-point favorite. Made BYU a 15.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, but I took a shot on the over. I wrote this one up. I set my total at 153.5. Do have an Oklahoma team that's looking to play a little bit more up-tempo. They're now in the top 85 in terms of total possessions per game, and they're well outside the top 110 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they go up against a BYU team that has been a top 20 unit in terms of points scored on a per possession basis when they've been at home. We have seen quite a bit of drop-off with their play when they've been away from home, but I like what I'm seeing out of Igor Demin. He's been able to give you 11 points, 5.8 assists per game. Missed a little bit of time earlier in the season, but he and Richie Saunders have been able to play very well in tandem in the backcourt, with Saunders being your top three-point shooter at 43% from three-point range. Both of these guys combined for just under 3 steals per contest, as well as BYU, also a top 10 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage, and they generate a bunch of offensive rebounds. Well, they do not let you get offensive rebounds. They are a top 20 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, as you've had a bunch of guys down low like Fusani Traore along Kebekita be able to do a nice job there. Those two guys specifically have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game. You've got Demin giving you about 4 rebounds per game as well, and then you've been able to get some nice versatility out of Trayvon Nell, who's been able to give you 9.5 points per contest. Hasn't given you the facilitation that he did a season ago, but now he's shooting about 42.5% from three-point range. And with Oklahoma State, this is a team that's looking to generate some turnovers, as Arterio Dean actually led all of college basketball in terms of steals per game a season ago. And for Oklahoma State, they are a top 40 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but this is a BYU team that, when they've been at home, they've done a nice job taking care of the ball. They're turning the ball over about 11.5 to 12 times per contest. Not bad, not amazing. And this has been an Oklahoma State team that has been rough with regards to their shooting. They're outside the top 280 in terms of both 2-point shooting percentage and 3-point shooting percentage, but they're finding a way of being able to get to the free throw line. In terms of free throws attempted per field goal attempt, they're a top 50 team in the country with that regard, as you've got Marcellus Avery, Abdul Usman, who have both been able to give you 12.6 points per contest. And to the credit of Usman, he hasn't taken a lot of threes, but he shot 63% from three-point range when he chucked them up. Brandon Newman is shooting about 36% from the outside, 7.5 points per contest. This is a BYU team that obviously is going to do a much better job defensively at home rather than on the road, but they are allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range. So I do think that open looks are going to be at, and heck, even at home, BYU allowing opponents to shoot north of 32.5% from three-point range. So I do think that you're going to be able to get a lot of good open looks. This is an Oklahoma State team that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot 35.5% from three, 270th in all of college basketball. So wrote up the over in the spot, and then especially with the travel, having to go to elevation, I think that takes it out of this Oklahoma State team. Want to lay up to 15 with BYU to go along with that over. 661, 662 on the betting board. San Jose State plays us in New Mexico, and New Mexico is finding themselves as a road favorite of 9.5 to 10 points. So on this game, you're going to be getting it out of 152.5. I set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Old St. Josie State, with San Jose State certainly has been less than savory defensively for them. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I've been liking what I've been seeing out of Josh Uduje. Uduje has been already a Mountain West Sixth Man of the Year in his career, 16.5 points. He's been able to shoot from three-point, 36% from the outside, and it's a San Jose State team that, though they do a lot of things, shall we say, not necessarily the world's greatest, they're getting a lot more production down low out of Robert Viola, who missed all of last season due to an injury, a block and a half, 7 rebounds, 8 points per contest. Love the way that he's been able to emerge throughout the season. Will McClendon has now been able to shoot 36% from three-point range, 13 points per contest for San Jose State. There's not really that one thing where they shine through and they do a great job of, really, other than not turning the ball over. They're a top 65 team in the country in terms of being able to protect the ball, but there's not really one thing that they do overly horribly. Meanwhile, this New Mexico team, they leave themselves wide open to giving up open three-point shots, as they are currently outside the top 335 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Donovan Dent has been incredible for this team, 19 points, 7 assists, and has really been able to buckle down on the turnovers as well. It was a little bit of a less than savory start to the season for New Mexico, and for New Mexico, they're going to be looking to attack that strength of San Jose State because they're a top 30 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Nelly Jr. Joseph is right now averaging a double-double as well. 12.5 points, 10 boards, 1.7 blocks per contest, while True Washington has been true to himself. Well, giving you about 2 steals, 10.5 points, shoots about 38.5% from three-point range. But that three-point shooting defense for New Mexico has been a little bit ghastly, and they've been very fortunate as well. New Mexico is facing off opponents that are shooting 64.6% at the free throw line. So this has been one of your luckier teams in all of college basketball this season, and this is a New Mexico team that is absolutely looking to gun it. In terms of total possessions per game for New Mexico, they are currently number 4 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, San Jose State, they dial it back a little bit more. San Jose State always finds themselves in the bottom 200 with this regard right now. In terms of total possessions per game, they're clocking in about 281st. So good old situations, something's got to give. Neither of these defenses are necessarily overly, shall we say, efficient. I do think that San Jose State does a good enough job of protecting the ball to hold in this game. So I set my total 156.5 in on the over and at 9+ taking those points with San Jose State. 663, 664 on the betting board. Nevada plays those at Air Force, and Air Force does find themselves as 19.5 to 20-point dogs. So on this game, it's between 127.5 to 128, and with Air Force, I did set them as an underdog of 18.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points now. With Air Force, this is a team that's been pretty ghastly defensively as well. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're only giving up about 1.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than at home. And for Nevada, I thought that this defense was going to be a little bit better this season. They're about 99th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, Nevada's saving grace has been they have been really good with their three-point shooting thus far this season. They are a top 50 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and at home it's more around 41.5% in a roadside-shoot court environment. That sinks all the way down to 34.5% from three-point. Meanwhile, Air Force has been shooting about 34.5% from three. That's a top 125 mark in all of college basketball. And Ethan Taylor for this Air Force team, he's right now doing it all for them. He's been able to supply them with 14.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4 assists per contest. He's the lone guy on the roster, by the way, giving you north of 10 points per game as Wesley Chalkowski. He's a true 7-footer that gives you 2.1 rebounds per game. Still baffles my mind, but shoots about 32.5% from three-point range. You're now getting back into the fold as well. Man that was injured for the beginning part of the season, and Bo Becker, he's been back for 4 games. They've eased him back. He was a 13-point per game scorer a season ago. I do expect him to be going northward with regards to his production, and that should be able to give the team a little bit of a spark. And boy, oh boy, does Air Force need it, because they're getting just completely plowed on the glass. In terms of percentage of their missed shots that they pull in as an offensive rebound, they're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with that regard, and they're allowing opponents to shoot 36.9% from three-point range. That's outside the top 320 nationally. That's a big reason why I did set my total at 130.5. You've got an Air Force team that plays super slowly. As a matter of fact, both of these teams outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that Nevada going to be able to knock down those shots to be able to give you an over. But again, this is a Nevada team that they've left a little bit of something to be desired, because they are a very top-heavy team. You've got 2 guys that will be able to go out there, give you 13-plus points per contest in Nick Davidson along with Kobe Sanders. These 2 guys combine for about 30.5 points per game. They combine to shoot in that neighborhood about 39% from three-point range. Other than that, you've got Trey Coleman, who gives you about 9 points. He throws in their 4 assists per contest, and it's a Nevada team that they don't turn the ball over a ton. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per game, but they themselves outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I do think that that keeps Air Force lively in this game. On the over, so my total 130.5, and with regards to Nevada, set them as an 18.5 point favorite, so you're 19+ taking those points. 665, 666 on the betting board. USC plays host to Iowa. Iowa is an underdog of 2.5 points. So this game between 161.5 to a 162. With Iowa, I did set them as an underdog of 3.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with USC. I really feel like with USC, they've started to find just a little bit of something with so many different transfers. Now, the big fear that you always have with this USC team is on the glass, as they do rank outside the top 150 with regards to rebound percentage, and just haven't gotten a lot out of Josh Cohen down low, as he's been able to give you scoring. He's give you about 8.5 points per game, but 10.5 rebounds per game, not necessarily savory. It's been St. Thomas who's done a little bit of everything for them. 9.5 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, steal and a half per contest, only shoots about 30% from three-point range, but Chibuzo Agbo, after a little bit of a cold start to the season, he's now supplying the team with 12.5 points, shoots from three-point range about 39% at the free throw line as well, shoots about 87.5% of the free throw line. And that's one thing that you do have to like with this USC team. Each of their top 4 scorers shoot at least 76.5% at the free throw line, and their top 7 scorers, all but one of them, have been able to shoot at least 76% at the free throw line, though one of them is Terrence Williams, who's been in and out of the fold all season long. On the flip side, you've got an Iowa team that they're just always so much better with their offense when they're at home rather than on the road. Iowa's still not going to turn the ball over. They always do a tremendous job with that regard in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, always a top 50 team in the country, but for Iowa, they're shooting 42.1% from three-point range at home. That sinks down to about 32.8% when they're in a roadside-shoot-your-court environment. If you look at the overall scoring for Iowa, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 15th in the country, but they're scoring 18 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. They now have to go from the lovely Midwest on over to the great state of California, and it's going to take quite a bit out of them, in my opinion, as you've got Peyton Sanford be able to emerge a little bit more with this three-point shooting. Was a little bit cold to begin the season, but back up to shooting about 35% from three, 17 points per contest. Josh Dix is right now shooting 48% from three-point range at 14.5 points per contest. I do think that that's going to be going downward a little bit. Now, I do think that Iowa's actually going to do a solid job on the glass. Owen Freeman, 16.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest, and this has been an Iowa team that's been a little bit better with regards to their defense. Again, I'm not going to call them amazing or anything like that, but Iowa's generating turnovers this season. They're actually a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That has led them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, being able to ascend to about 116th in the country. But again, they're giving up 16 points more per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than at home. And USC is a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. They've ascended into the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Nothing too amazing there. But again, I do think that with this Iowa team, going through all that travel, going through everything that they do in just road games in general, that we're going to see the scoring shrink a little bit more, and that's going to play in the hands of USC. And I do think that USC is going to do a nice job taking care of the ball with Desmond Claude, doing a nice job in the backcourt, giving you 13 plus points per contest. So did some my total of 55.5. I like the under of USC willing to lay up to 3 with them. 667, 668 on the betting board. Baylor's on the road against Arizona. Arizona's a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Total on this game between 149 to 149.5, and with Arizona made them just a 3.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Baylor. Now for Baylor, they're a team that's very inconsistent when they're on the road as compared to at home. Baylor is number 2 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis when they're at home in a roadside-shoot-your-court setting. It's not like they're absolutely terrible, but they're outside the top 75 with that regard, as a three-point shooting percentage just isn't quite the same. When Baylor is at home, this team is an absolute flamethrower from three-point range, as they have been able to shoot at home from three-point range well above 40%, and then on the road, it goes somewhere like the mid-30s. So that's something that you do need to be aware of. VJ Edgecombe, though, he has been able to be so versatile for the team. He throws in there about 10 to 11 points per contest, but he also gives you a little bit over a block, a little bit over a steal per contest, 5+ rebounds per game, a few assists. So I've been liking what I've been seeing there. And no Chad Omier, 16 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. I do think that Baylor is actually going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to match up on the glass. This is a Baylor team that's not allowing a whole bunch of second and third chances as well in terms of their overall rebound rate. This has been a Baylor team that's been in the top 50 nationally with that regard, and this is an Arizona team that, even without Monteuvis Crivas, who was able to give you a right around about 5 rebounds per game as a true 7-footer, was able to do a really nice job on the glass. This has still been an Arizona team that's ranked number 9 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, and that, on top of that, you lose Umar Ballo in the offseason as well, and the big key is, what are you going to be able to get out of Caleb Love? Because you either get really good Caleb Love or you get really bad Caleb Love, and there's not a whole lot of in between Caleb Love, who's been able to give you 16 points per contest, but currently shooting 32% from three-point range. As a matter of fact, out of right now your top 4 scorers for Arizona, nobody shoots above 32.1% from three-point range, with Jaden Bradley shooting 32.1%, 11.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest. Now, to the credit of Arizona, they're once again cranking up the tempo. They're in the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game, and they only turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, and it's actually been the defense that has been a little bit more of the calling card for this Arizona team. And you look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Arizona's right now clocking in the top 50 in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, up to 26th in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, you've got a Baylor team that's more around 75th. And again, with Baylor, they are giving up more than 30 points per 100 possessions more on the road rather than at home. Now, part of that is due to the just level of competition that they've been playing at home, but This team has not been the same team away from Waco, but again, what are you going to be able to get out of Caleb Love? That's a big question for this team. You've got Anthony De La Rosa, who's been very versatile for this Arizona team. I love what he's able to bring to the table as he supplies you within that neighborhood about 9 points. He'll throw in there an assist and a half per contest. He's been able to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. Really, the lone guy that's been able to pop in from three-point range. And Toby Awaka gives you 7 rebounds per game as well. So in the end, I do think that Arizona finds a way to get the job done, but I do think that Arizona might have a little bit of a tough time guarding along the perimeter as their weakness in the defense has been allowing opponents to shoot well north of 31.5% from three-point range. So I do like the over in this spot. I did set my total at a 153.5, and with regards to Arizona, really make them 3.5 point favorites. So I like the points with Baylor 669, 670 on the betting board. Arizona State plays us to Central Florida. Central Florida, an underdog of 5.5 to 6 points. 147 is the total, and I made Arizona State an 8.5 point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number. This is just not the same Central Florida team that we saw a season ago. That was very good down low. That was very good in terms of being able to hit the board. It says right now they are well outside the top 100 with regards to rebound percentage. And this is a Central Florida team that's getting bludgeoned defensively. 131st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Arizona State, they've been a pretty good defensive team, especially at home. Top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But if you look at them just at home, they're a top 55 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And you've been able to have the freshmen really step up for the team. Jaden Keenance has been able to give you a north of 7.5 rebounds per game. I always say his name incorrectly, but he's also been able to give the team north of 2.5 blocks per contest. As Arizona State, a top 35 team in the country in terms of percentage of opponent shots that they block. Their three-point shooting percentage is back as well. They're shooting about 36% from the outside, with Bashir Jahad leading the way in scoring with about 13 points per contest. At 6'9", he's able to shoot 36.5% for three. And Jusan Sanan, true freshman, has been mostly coming off the bench this year. He shoots 47.5% from three-point range. It's a unit in Arizona State that they do turn the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like. They're turning the ball over a little bit north of 13 times per contest, but they also do a nice job not fouling a ton. They're able to keep their opponents off of the free throw line. And for Central Florida, the good news is they do now have Jalen Sellers back in the fold, a double-figure scorer from the season ago that has been missing throughout much of the campaign, but even with that, this is still just not the same team on the boards that they were a season ago outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. And they're just really giving it up from three-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot darn near 35% from three-point range. That's outside the top 250 nationally. And Arizona State has done a nice job be able to guard the perimeter themselves, as Arizona State, top 50 team in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot 24.7% from three-point range at home. And not as if this has been an amazing three-point shooting team for Central Florida. As you've got Darius Johnson, who shoots 42% from three. Is 2.9 steals per contest, by the way. Top 10 in all of college basketball. 15 points per game. Mustafa Thiam has been solid down low. He's giving you 5 boards, 7.5 points per game. And Keyshawn Hall does a bit of everything. 2.5 assists, 16 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. But other than those guys, you've got a very top-heavy team. Outside of that, you haven't been able to get a lot of production. And I do think that with Benny Williams, guys like this, just not being able to step up, Dior Johnson has been a bit of a disappointment that Arizona State does find a way to get the job done, especially with all the travel for Central Florida. Set my total at a 148.5, so along with laying the number here with Arizona, set them as an 8.5 point favorite. Also in on the over, and we wrap things up with 671, 672 on the betting board. Another game that I wrote up, San Diego State plays us Colorado State. Colorado State, an underdog of 8 to 8.5 points. 130.5 is your total, and I wrote up San Diego State. I placed them as a 12.5 point favorite. San Diego State is doing it once again on defense. This team is in the top 15 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Colorado State team that has not been able to guard the arc when they've been on the road. They're 280th in the country in terms of road three-point shooting percentage themselves at 29.9%. They're 224th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. And for this Colorado State unit, it's just a case where it's just a little bit too top-heavy, and you need a little bit more out of Bowen Bourne. Bowen Bourne, I felt like, was actually hindering Northern Iowa a season ago. He's come in, he's only been able to give the team like 5 points, a little bit over 2 assists per contest. Feels like he's really falling out of favor with the team, as Ethan Morton has been able to do an okay job of being able to give you some facilitation, about 2.5 assists, but he's a starter that gives you 3 points per contest with 26.5 minutes per game. That's a bit of an issue for the team. McQuay Clifford, along with Jalen Lake, these guys have been pretty tremendous for the team. They're averaging as a collective about 29.5 points per contest, both shoot between 35 and 36% from 3 points. And to the credit of Lake, he shoots north of 90% at the free throw line as well. But Northern Colorado, well outside the top 300 with regards to offensive rebound percentage. They are grabbing about 8.2 offensive rebounds per game. If you look at just raw offensive rebounds per game, outside the top 325 nationally with that regard, and they're just not guarding the three-point arc, allowing opponents to shoot darn near 35% from three-point range. And that's where the bread is buttered for San Diego State on offense. San Diego State hasn't necessarily gotten a lot of interior offense going, as they do have Mugun Guath, who has been very good at being able to block shots. he's much more advanced with regards to his shot blocking rather than his interior offense. 7 points, but 2.9 blocks, 4 boards per contest. He's shooting 38% from three-point range, by the way, at 7 feet tall. But Miles Bird, Nick Boyd, these two guys have been able to combine to shoot about 39% from three-point range, and combined 26 points, 6 assists, 3 steals per game. These guys have been very rock solid. BJ Turned It Up Davis has been able to give you about 10 points. He shoots 39.5% from three-point range. William McKinney is able to shoot 37% from three-point range. San Diego State just has a whole bunch of three-point shooting, while they themselves allow you to shoot less than 28% from three-point range. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. San Diego State still pretty solid at being able to generate turnovers as well. They're about top 125 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and this is a San Diego State team that, as we know, they're not going to play super duper up tempo. They've been a little bit faster this year, but still about 216th in the country with that regard. Colorado State has actually upped their tempo quite a bit from past years. They're up to about 155th in the country after they were well outside the top 250 last season. So, circumstance where I did set San Diego State as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay the number. Did set my total at a 130.5. I saw this opener at a 130, so if we could get back to that opener of 130 and on the over, and willing to lay with San Diego State, and that wraps things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Ryan McIntyre, who does great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter / X timeline at GNN_41. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the season on this podcast, which means I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.